Chapter 189. Cars couldn't pass through the dense forest, so when a group of people came in from the entrance of the camp, if the two pieces of wood stuck in the ground could be counted as a door, it meant that someone had probably been tricked into coming here. Not counting Xiao Jingyi's group, there were nearly 1,000 people gathered here. Even if only half of them were tricked, there were still more than 500 people. Although they already knew that a lot of people had been tricked this time, the number of fat sheep and hardcore believers had completely exceeded Xiao Jingyi's expectations. So when Chen Tuo looked at Xiao Jingyi with a "you city people are stupid" look, even Xiao Jingyi blushed a little. What was worse was that even if Xiao Jingyi didn't watch much TV and wasn't very interested in politics and current affairs, he could still recognize that there were many celebrities in Jiangjin's political and business circles among the people present. Putting everything else aside, just the fact that these people had disappeared together was probably enough to set off a huge wave in Jiangjin. Wait, the people who were just surrounded by those people in religious clothes don't seem to be new victims. At this time, Fang Xiaoqing suddenly said softly. So the few of them looked at each other and then began to approach the door with tacit understanding. Although those burly men who looked more like bodyguards than believers intentionally or unintentionally surrounded the people to prevent others from spying on them, they were only amateurs after all. For Xiao Jingyi and Fang Xiaoqing, who had undergone some training in the police academy, they were still very inexperienced. Although Ding Yang hadn't undergone special training in this area, he had also had a fortuitous encounter. His bodily functions couldn't be compared to ordinary people, including his vision. As for Chen Tuo, well, this guy didn't even think about spying on the people who had come. He was purely surrounded by the people around him. The person who came was a woman who wrapped herself up tightly. From the more obvious secondary sexual characteristics on her chest and her long hair, it was certain that she was at least not a cute boy. After observing for a while, the group of people returned to the vicinity of Su Xinxing as if nothing had happened in order to avoid being targeted by the surrounding believers. By the way, at this time, Su Xinxing was pretending to be a normal house cat, using an innocent look to catch butterflies. Did you find anything? Xiao Jingyi asked in a low voice. I heard the believers around me calling her master. Ding Yang, who had already immersed himself in the role and treated himself as the main character, rubbed his nose and replied solemnly, I'm afraid she's the main character this time. Do you need me to poison you? Chen Tuo pulled open his pants and pretended to take something out. However, the angry Fang Xiaoqing punched him to the ground with a red face. Let's wait and see. I have a feeling that there's something wrong with that, master. Ding Yang rubbed his nose and pretended to be deep in thought. Is your nose itching? Xiao Jingyi couldn't help but ask. No, I just think that as the main character, I need a signature action that's easier to remember. I think this move is already too common. Why don't you try something like a wicked smile or a cold smile? Xiao Jingyi said seriously. I tried it alone in the office, but I couldn't make an evil smile even when my face was cramping. At that time, there was an employee who came in to report on their work. Ding Yang sighed and looked embarrassed. I'm afraid I'll never forget the way he looked at me with that retard expression. I'm sorry for your loss. Xiao Jingyi was dumbfounded for a long time before he finally squeezed out this sentence. It's okay. Later, I sent that guy to clean the toilet. I'd just like to see him not happy with the job but unwilling to give up the high salary of my company and not want to resign. It seemed that this guy was not very generous. Ahem, can we continue to talk about the master? Fang Xiaoqing coughed dryly and asked them to quickly get back on track. Although we haven't thought about this, according to the current situation, it's not incomprehensible that the master, as a key figure, would come here. Xiao Zhenyi quickly and seriously analyzed the situation. After all, this can be regarded as the gathering place of all the backbones and ATMs of the cult. If the master doesn't come out to preside over the overall situation, as long as some of the fat sheep come back to their senses, who knows what kind of trouble will occur. Chen Tuo, who was not listening carefully at all, nodded his head perfunctorily and pretended to agree on the surface. At the same time, he inwardly thought to himself, this guy will definitely be henpecked in the future. But we know too little about this cult. Without knowing what exactly they want to do, we can only try to deal with them as they come. Because Ding Yang and the others took the initiative to come into contact with this cult, they had not seen the cult's methods of bewitching people with their own eyes. On the contrary, they knew relatively little about this cult. And this cult's doctrine was very characteristic of the Chinese dynasty's copycat doctrine. It was a hodgepodge of the doctrines of several religions. When Xiao Zhenyi flipped through their religious propaganda pamphlets, he even found that the guy who wrote this was probably muddle-headed. He copied the parts of the Quran without even changing Allah. He was really not afraid of being called Allah. Xiao Zhenyi did not have any opinions about this. If there were only 2 or 3 of them, he would probably be a little nervous about being in the enemy's camp. But after he found out that Su Xinxing, who looked like a kitten on the outside but was even more powerful than Godzilla on the inside, he did not feel much about it. At worst, he would first make a move and wipe out all the cultists here. As for the celebrities, he would bribe Su Xinxing with a family bucket. Then, he would use amnesia, physics, to deal with it. Then, he would submit a self-reflection, and everything would be fine, sorry. Just as they were secretly discussing how to deal with this, a tall priest came up to them and gave them a fright. Excuse me, is Mr. Ding Yang here? Yes, I'm here. Ding Yang understood that the real show was about to begin. He immediately stood up and smiled wickedly. Mr. Ding Yang, is your face okay? The priest asked with concern. It's okay, just a cramp, just a cramp. Ding Yang realized that he really could not make the standard expression of the main character of the righteous cultivation world. He was a little dejected. Oh, that's good. Although the burly priest still could not get over Ding Yang's twisted expression, he still said according to the script, the master is free now. If you don't have any questions, can you come with me? Then my friends. Ding Yang looked at Xiao Zhenyi and the others and asked without revealing anything. Sorry, the master only wants to see you. The burly priest replied without hesitation. After all, it was only Ding Yang who had donated the money. Xiao Zhenyi and the others had only come because of him, so it was normal that the master did not want to see them. So, Ding Yang thought for a moment, then nodded and agreed to meet the so-called master. Chapter 190. I'm sorry it took me so long to meet you. The meeting place was in a dark green tent that looked like a yurt. Ding Yang thought it would be dark inside, but when he walked in, he realized that he had been overthinking. There was almost no light source, but the tent was as bright as day. This strange contrast even made people feel unreal for a moment. So that was how it was. She was using this method to emphasize that she had supernatural powers and make the guest waver so that she could have the upper hand in the meeting later. Although Ding Yang did not see what the other party was doing, he could still vaguely guess what the other party was trying to do. In addition, there was a smell similar to sandalwood in the tent. Ordinary people might just ignore it as sandalwood, but Ding Yang could clearly feel that the flow of true yuan in his body had slowed down slightly. It was not because of the fragrance, but because it was closer to the feeling of calming down. For ordinary people, such a state would cause them to be calm or even a little lazy. In this state, no matter how hot-tempered a person was, it would be easier for them to accept the opinions of others. They would also quietly change their perception or attitude toward a certain matter because they did not want to refute the other party's words. Even if there were no other methods, just the combination of these two and a good eloquent mouth was enough to make an ordinary swindler successful. For Ding Yang, who also had a certain degree of supernatural powers, in the early days of his business, he had used many similar methods that could not be seen in the light. Because of this, he had accumulated a considerable amount of wealth and connections in a short time. This was a very interesting phenomenon. Most of the rich people in this country were more superstitious than ordinary people. Because my schedule was quite full. I believe you know that I can only meet a few people every day. The master, who was sitting cross-legged behind a short table, said in a low voice. Although her voice was a little neutral and her tone was a little strange, if one listened carefully, one could still hear the unique gentleness of a woman. Probably to strengthen her sense of authority, she used this deliberately mystifying way of speaking. "It's okay, I understand your difficulties," Ding Yang said perfunctorily as he commented in his heart. He followed her instructions and sat down on the cushion in front of her desk so that the two of them could face each other. This made the smell of sandalwood even stronger. Ding Yang, whose 5 senses were much sharper than ordinary people, could not help but frown. However, it was also because of this that Ding Yang was finally able to see the man's face under the hood. At first glance, there was nothing special about it. It was the face of a very ordinary middle-aged woman. If one had to describe it, it might be more common than the senior expert he had met in the haunted mansion. To Ding Yang's surprise, the man's eyes looked dull and lifeless, as if he was blind. However, judging from the master's actions after he saw her at the door, she should be able to see. "Then, may I ask, where did you hear about me, Mr. Ding Yang?" Before Ding Yang could continue to observe and find any clues, the woman asked first. With the help of magic, Ding Yang was not afraid of this so-called master. He answered casually, "I heard it from a friend of mine. I heard that you can help people change their guardian spirits and make them more lucky, right?" "That's right, but from what I see, Mr. Ding Yang, with your luck, I don't think you need my help," the master continued in a deep voice. It seemed that this woman had already investigated him. Ding Yang thought in his heart. However, this was to be expected. If it was not for the thorough investigation, these cultists would not have brought him and his group to this place so easily. "Master, you should know that I used to be a robber before I became rich, right?" So, Ding Yang started to make up a half-truth. "Although I've made a lot of money because of this, I've been having trouble sleeping lately. I think it must be because I was targeted by something unclean when I was fighting. Master, if you can help me get a new guardian spirit to solve this problem, I'll be very grateful to you." Ding Yang waved his hand and took out an unfilled check. He made an expression that said, "Money is not a problem, I am so poor that I only have money left." He believed that no swindler would not be interested in this. "Come, let me see if you are a swindler." Just as Xiao Zhenyi and the others were getting impatient, Ding Yang walked out of the tent. "How is it?" Thus, they hurriedly surrounded him, being careful of the priests who looked like bodyguards. At the same time, they asked Ding Yang, "What happened to that master?" It's a real master. That's amazing. Ding Yang seemed to be in shock. He looked like he was still in a daze as he kept muttering to himself, "Unbelievable, this is unbelievable." "Aya, your hand is cut." Feng Xiaoqing noticed that there seemed to be a small cut on Ding Yang's fingertip. Drops of blood were dripping down. It's okay. Ding Yang said as if he did not feel anything. "It was probably cut by some sawtooth grass. I was wondering why you were so distracted." "Is that master so beautiful that he charmed you?" Chen Tuo unhappily patted Ding Yang's trousers. "You're not allowed to speak ill of the great master." "Forget it, I'm tired. I need to go back and experience it." Ding Yang roared impatiently, and then walked towards the tent that the church had assigned to them absent-mindedly. After he entered the tent, Xiao Zhenyi looked at the other two in disbelief. What's wrong with this guy? He couldn't have really been charmed by the beauty, right? I don't think so. Feng Xiaoqing said uncertainly. I'm afraid that something unexpected has happened. Chen Tuo pulled on Xiao Zhenyi's shirt and said softly, let's go to a place where there's no one. Then, they carefully avoided the sight of the cultists and hid in the forest outside the campsite. Earthchild, did you find anything? After making sure that there were no priests around, Xiao Zhenyi asked impatiently. Ding Yang has practiced some strange martial arts. Although his body is not invulnerable, a normal knife would not be able to cut through his skin. Do you really think that sawtooth grass could hurt him? Chen Tuo and Ding Yang had gone through the haunted tomb together. They were much closer than Xiao Zhenyi and the rest, so they knew more about Ding Yang than Xiao Zhenyi and the rest. Then how did he get hurt? That small cut on his fingertip doesn't look like it was left from a fight. Feng Xiaoqing was puzzled by Chen Tuo's words. If she had to describe it, that kind of cut was more like a child accidentally cutting his finger when he was sharpening a pencil with a utility knife. If Ding Yang had really fought with the master, there should not have been such a wound. No, if you think about it carefully, it's easy to get the answer. Chen Tuo sighed. There are only 2 people in the tent. Even if we use the method of elimination, we can know that it was not caused by the master. Then, isn't it only Ding Yang himself? If he used his fingernail, he should have been able to cut his finger. When I went up to him, I looked at his fingernail. There was indeed some blood stain under his thumbnail. Wait a minute, isn't that even more strange? Why did he cut his own finger? Feng Xiaoqing still could not understand the logic behind it. She looked confused. On the other hand, Xiao Zhenyi seemed to understand the meaning behind Chen Tuo's words. His face gradually darkened. I'm afraid that he wanted to leave us a message. We were all outside, and could have done it with a shout, but he needed to use this method. I'm afraid this is going to be troublesome. He explained to Feng Xiaoqing, then paused. And the most important problem is that we don't know what message he left. No, in fact, I've already gotten the message he left. However, Chen Tuo gave them a surprise. He raised his hand, and there was a small paper ball in his hand. Where did you get this? Xiao Zhenyi asked in surprise and joy. When that guy, Ding Yang, came out of the tent, one of his trousers was slightly rolled up unnaturally, so I pretended to be dissatisfied and went up to pat his trousers. After that, the thing that was originally clamped inside naturally fell out. Chen Tuo threw the paper ball indifferently and replied, this is it. After spreading out the paper, they found that it was actually a check. However, there was neither a signature nor an amount on it. Instead, there were 2 words written in blood. Because it might have been written by Ding Yang in a hurry, the handwriting was very messy. Xiao Zhenyi and the others took a long time to recognize it. The first word was I, but this word was crossed out by a diagonal line. The second word was ghost. What does Ding Yang want to tell us with this? Fang Xiaoqing looked at Qin Tuo without thinking. This little guy's behavior just now made the female police officer have an inexplicable expectation of him. This naturally made Xiao Zhenyi a little jealous. Therefore, Xiao Zhenyi spoke first. Although I'm not sure what the word ghost means, the meaning of the word I in front is very clear. Crossing out the word I was equivalent to not me. Perhaps when Ding Yang wrote this word, he had already expected that when he walked out of the tent, he would no longer be himself. Then that ghost, could it be that he was possessed by a ghost? Fang Xiaoqing thought of the ghost that she and Xiao Zhenyi had encountered before and couldn't help but shiver. Chapter 191. When Xinhua was shaken awake by her father, it was still dark outside the tent. The little girl looked at her father with sleepy eyes. Her originally long hair had become messy due to her bad sleeping posture, curling up into a pile of strands. "What's the matter, Dad? Is it dawn already?" She rubbed her eyes and asked half awake. "Shh, lower your voice. Put on your clothes and let's get out of here," Dadin whispered. Originally, he was only skeptical about this so-called religion. However, because many business partners treated the master as a distinguished guest, even if he didn't believe it in his heart, in order to make a comeback, he didn't want to embarrass them, so he pretended to be as devout as them. However, after coming to this so-called camp, he felt that something was wrong. This suspicion completely broke out after meeting an old friend of his. Dad's old friend had a big background. It was said that he could talk and laugh with the big bosses of Zongnanhai. However, he was also a person who was fastidious. When Dadin was in trouble, he didn't stand on the sidelines like other people. Instead, he helped Dadin, which gave Dadin the capital to make a comeback. Otherwise, Dadin would probably still be in prison for various reasons. However, after meeting his old friend here today, Dadin felt that something was wrong. The other party didn't have his usual shrewd and capable appearance. He worshipped the mysterious master very much. It was completely different from the previous kind but arrogant appearance. It was incredible. After that, Father and suddenly realized that his business partners seemed to have the tendency to become like this. It was just that this change was subtle and gradual, so the more familiar people were with those people, the more difficult it was for them to notice this change. On the contrary, because this old friend's life had no intersection now, and they hadn't seen each other for a long time, Dadin suddenly felt that something was wrong. There was no doubt that something was wrong with this strange religion for such a situation to occur. Whether it was an alternative MLM nest or a simple cult, in short, it was definitely not a good thing. Therefore, Papa An was careful. During the day, he pretended that he didn't notice anything. He only used the excuse of collecting firewood for the bonfire to wander around the campsite. In fact, he was secretly memorizing the surrounding environment and escape routes. When night came, he would take in Xinhua and escape from this damned place together. "What's wrong?" And Xinhua, who was wearing bare pajamas, tilted her head and asked in a daze. "There's no time to explain. Anyway, let's get out of here first." Dadin was vigilant outside, praying that they wouldn't be discovered by the cult members who were on night watch. And Xinhua was an obedient child. After realizing that her father wasn't joking, most of her sleepiness immediately dissipated. She got into the thin towel quilt and changed her clothes. But after that, she suddenly pulled her father's hand in a panic. "Dad, Xiaohei's cat is missing, don't care about the black cat now, let's go first." Because Papan was just an ordinary person, Su Xinxing had never talked to him, so he naturally didn't know that the black cat was actually his daughter's bodyguard. But Mom said that I must be with him this time, and Xinhua frowned, and her little face was full of worry. It seemed that she was afraid of being scolded by her mother. "It's okay, it's just a Xiaohei cat. When we go back, I'll help you buy another one on the way," Dadan said casually. In his opinion, that Xiaohei cat was really nothing special, and it seemed to have a tendency to shed fur. It must be troublesome to take care of it. The reason why his wife told his daughter so was probably because she didn't want his daughter to run around and take care of the cat. Although Xinhua still had some doubts about this, she still decided to listen to her father in the end. Together with her father, they secretly left the tent under the cover of the dark night and walked into the forest, 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. The advantage of this kind of moss-covered woodland was that almost all the ground was occupied by moss, so there were few bushes. It was easier to walk, and it was not so easy to trip and obstruct. The disadvantage was that there were no bushes, so the vision was very wide. If they didn't keep a certain distance, it was easy to be seen from afar. The forest at night was not as hot as it was during the day. The whistling wind passed through the trees and was stretched into a strange and sharp whistling sound. The canopy rustled because of this, making people instinctively feel afraid in the darkness. After running for an unknown amount of time, Papan was still fine, just a little out of breath, but Xinhua couldn't run anymore. It was simply impossible to expect an ordinary 4th-grade little girl to finish a 5-kilometer directional cross-country run in the woodland. "Dad, can we rest for a while?" the girl asked, panting. Dadan thought about it and finally felt that it was not safe. "Good girl, hold on." "No, if you really can't run anymore, I'll carry you." Then he squatted down with his back facing Xinhua. However, at this moment, a male voice sounded from behind. "Where are you two going?" Dadan's heart suddenly sank. He recognized this voice. It was the voice of the priest who came to his house and invited him to join this camping trip. He also wanted Xinhua to come with him. How could this be? They had already run for so long. Even if they were conservative, they should have run almost half the distance. When they left the campsite, he confirmed that they did not alert anyone. So how did this guy catch up? It was summer, but Dadan felt as if he was in an ice cave. An inexplicable sense of fear gripped his heart. He couldn't even make a sound. If it wasn't for the fact that he was in front of his daughter, he would have collapsed to the ground because of the overwhelming fear in his heart. "Don't be nervous, I'm just reminding you. It's late at night. It's not good to run around the campsite and disturb everyone's rest. Isn't that right, Mr. N?" the priest said with a smile, but that smile made Dadan feel even more gloomy. "Campsite, around?" Dadan heard this and looked forward. Then, his pupils suddenly dilated. His face was full of disbelief. Although he couldn't see clearly because of the dark sky, he could still vaguely see the outline of the campsite in front of him. "No! No! No!" Dadan fell into chaos. He had already observed it during the day. When he came to the campsite, he deliberately and quietly left marks on some trees to prevent himself from getting lost. When he ran just now, he definitely ran according to the marks, and he definitely ran more than half the distance, so what was going on now? Was all his previous efforts all in vain? Vaguely, he remembered something a male friend once said when he was young. "NZ, have you heard of ghosts going around walls?" "Sorry, I don't believe in superstitions." "It's not superstition. I heard that there really is such a thing. I was walking on a familiar path, but in the blink of an eye, I found myself in another place. This is the so-called ghosts going around walls. Is this the reason why you were in the ladies' room before?" How should he put it? He didn't know why, but after thinking about this, Dadden inexplicably felt that he had calmed down a lot. Ghosts going around walls? Mr. N, the priest finally stopped smiling and began to slowly walk toward Dadden. Sometimes, knowing too much isn't a good thing. If it was a fight, Dadden compared his physique with the other parties and found that he seemed to have some advantages. In the past, in order to train his body, he also practiced Jeet Kune Do for a period of time. If he was prepared, he could still use some basic fighting skills. If he could knock this guy down at the beginning, he might be able to escape without alerting too many people. So, he pretended to be afraid and began to wait for the other party to approach his attack range. When the other party approached, Dadden smelled a strong smell of cologne. This made him frown involuntarily. When this guy went to his house to invite him to participate in this strange campsite, he didn't have such a strong smell of cologne on him. Was it to repel insects or something? But he had never heard of cologne having that kind of effect. Soon, Dadden noticed that something was wrong. Although the ambergris in the cologne could numb people's sense of smell to a certain extent, so cologne was quite effective against body odor, Dadden didn't know if it was because the smell was too strong or for other reasons, but Dadden still smelled a trace of strange odor mixed in the cologne. Dadden, who had been exposed to this smell because of some things, suddenly turned pale. Corpse odor. It was like the smell of rotting corpses after opening a cloth bag that had been soaked in water for several days. It didn't come from anywhere else. Without a doubt, the source of the corpse odor was the short and fat man in front of him. When he came to his house yesterday, the other party was still a normal human, but now, standing in front of him was a moving corpse. Are you kidding me? Dadden felt that his daily life seemed to have collapsed. Cultists, ghosts, moving corpses, a series of things that would never appear under normal circumstances, now appeared in front of him in one breath. If it wasn't for the idea of protecting his daughter, like the last pillar supporting his rationality, Dadden might have fallen into an unstable state of madness due to the sharp decrease in rationality. But even so, he still felt a burst of despair. How could he beat this kind of monster? No, if he risked his life, he might be able to delay it for a while. As long as Xinhua could escape, Papa N took a deep breath. He did not want to think about how a fourth-grade girl could escape from a forest full of cultists. Deceiving himself, he forced himself to focus on the person in front of him. Mustering his last bit of courage, he shouted out loud. Okay, okay. 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 As long as I'm alive, I will never let you touch a hair on my daughter. Chapter 192. On the other side of the campsite, Su Xinxing was yawning as he listened to Xiao Jingyi and the others describe the situation they encountered. After confirming that Ding Yang had indeed met with a mishap, Xiao Jingyi did not continue to let Qin Tuo and the others take the risk. He planned to let Su Xinxing deal with this matter directly. Su Xinxing listened to him patiently, then asked, "Then how do you plan to solve the problem of Ding Yang?" Xiao Zhenyi heard this and could not help but fall silent. Indeed, for Su Xinxing, it would not be difficult to destroy the evil cult's nest, but what about Ding Yang who was killed inside? Could it be that he was going to continue being possessed like this? There will always be a way. As long as the possessed ghost is removed, there will be no problem. If he wanted to find an excuse, Xiao Zhenyi could easily come up with a bunch of them. Based on his understanding of Su Xinxing, even if Su Xinxing was not satisfied with his answer, he would definitely take action to eliminate the evil cult in the end. But even so, Xiao Zhenyi still couldn't come up with an excuse that seemed to be reasonable. Because in the worst-case scenario, killing the so-called master might be equivalent to killing Ding Yang. For Xiao Zhenyi, who yearned for justice and was even admitted to the police academy to become a police officer, this was not an acceptable answer. Sometimes, for some people, conscience was a burden that they could never abandon. That's it. If you haven't made up your mind, it's better to think about what you're pursuing first. Su Xinxing stared at Xiao Zhenyi, whose expression was constantly changing like an amoeba. Finally, he sighed, turned around, wagged his tail, and left everyone's sight. He once again disappeared into the darkness. Only his indifferent voice sounded as usual. The father and daughter left the tent that I protected. During this period of time, they might attract the attention of most people in the evil cult. How troublesome! After a long period of silence, Xiao Zhenyi spoke softly to the darkness where not a single cat was present. Thanks, old Su. Naturally, he knew Su Xinxing's intention. If Ding Yang was unable to recover after the cult was uprooted, Xiao Zhenyi would definitely regret it for the rest of his life. Therefore, Su Xinxing deliberately created this opportunity for Xiao Zhenyi to find a glimmer of hope through his own actions. I'm sorry. I didn't ask for your permission before bringing you to this place. Xiao Zhenyi first apologized to Fang Xiaoqing and Chen Tuo. The following operation will be more dangerous. If you want to withdraw, Comrade Xiao Zhenyi, I am a police officer just like you. It is our duty to protect the people of this country. Do you think I will choose to give up at this time? Without waiting for him to finish, Fang Xiaoqing waved her small hand and passionately interrupted his words. No matter what, we will go with you. How should he put it? This girl really liked to join in the fun. Otherwise, as a Miss Perfect who did not have to worry about squandering money, she would not have become a police officer and even joined the special case investigation team. Wait a minute, I'm just an ordinary person. Don't represent me so casually. Chen Tuo immediately protested. Earthchild, don't tell me that you're going to watch Ding Yang turn into an idiot and touch your conscience. Don't tell me that on the level of conscience, you don't feel the slightest bit of pain? Fang Xiaoqing said righteously with an extremely oppressive voice. The one who should touch your conscience is you. Hey, he didn't become an idiot. Chen Tuo argued. Your tuition and living expenses were all funded by Ding Yang. As a kind person who sponsored you to immerse yourself in the sea of questions in high school, you were able to swim freely in algebra, English, ancient poetry, and other exams. Now that he has become like this, don't you feel the slightest bit of indignation? Actually, you hate Ding Yang very much. The indignation that I originally had has completely disappeared because of what you said. Earth Kid, think about your parents who work in the fields day and night. Don't tell me that the child they raised with their hands and sweat is such a heartless person. They will cry. The one who will cry is me. Speaking of which, this is the most leisurely time for farm work. Chen Tuo finally succumbed to the persuasion of the female police officer. Okay, I'll go too. Please don't persuade me with such inexplicable reasons. Xiao Zhiyi's plan was very simple. While Su Xinxing attracted most of the attention and strength of the cultists, the defense of the cultists would definitely become very weak. At that time, they would try to sneak into the tent of the so-called master and search. Ding Yang had gotten into trouble in that strange tent. If there was a way to save him, the answer would most likely be in the tent of the master. It was good to be able to find the answer in the tent, but if there was really no other way, they could only try to kidnap the master and get him to tell them the solution. However, to be honest, the latter was not a safe option. Even Ding Yang, who was currently the strongest in their group, had suffered at the hands of the other party. Unless Chen Tuo took the risk of going berserk again to release the Son of Heaven's sword, it would not be easy to fight the other party. Is there no plan B or something like that? After listening to Xiao Zhiyi's plan, Chen Tuo suddenly showed a bitter expression, as if he had eaten a bitter gourd, as if he regretted agreeing too quickly. Plan B, don't be a coward. Just do it. I choose to die. Chen Tuo rolled his eyes. After a while, there was a sudden commotion on the east side of the camp. The originally silent camp suddenly became noisy. Even though they maintained a certain distance from the camp, Xiao Zhiyi and the others could still hear the shouts and questions coming from that side. Most of the voices were beginning to move in that direction. Xiao Zhiyi knew that this was probably the opportunity that Su Xinxing had deliberately created. Okay, we have to take advantage of this opportunity to move quickly. If we move too slowly, I'm afraid. Xiao Zhiyi said with a serious expression. I'm afraid that those people who came back will discover us? Chen Tuo said as he took out the Emperor's sword. No, I'm afraid that old Su will finish off those people and then come this way. Chen Tuo summoned the sword spirit, who was throwing a tantrum in the Emperor's sword, and looked to the east where screams kept coming from. Would it kill you to trick them once in a while? Chapter 193. When Xiao Zhiyi and the others entered the Great Master's tent, they found that it was surprisingly bright inside. There was not a single light to be seen, nor were there any windows, although windows were useless at night, but the tent was not as dark as it should have been. The square tent was filled with a light and elegant sandalwood fragrance. The furnishings inside were also very simple. The furniture was simply a low table with a crystal ball on it. In addition, there was a vermilion shrine, a Buddha statue carved out of an unknown wood, and a cross cast with the crucifixion of Jesus on it. Even this place is a hodgepodge. Xiao Zhiyi complained somewhat helplessly. Wait a minute, don't move. At this moment, the Emperor's sword spirit floating behind Chen Tuo suddenly spoke up. What's wrong? Fang Xiaoqin, who was already nervous, quickly asked. This is an illusion. The sword spirit girl narrowed her eyes and carefully observed the surrounding environment. She clicked her tongue in wonder. Unbelievable. I always thought that this level of illusion had been lost more than 1,000 years ago. I didn't expect to see it here. Illusion? Xiao Zhiyi looked around but could not tell which part was an illusion. Which part is an illusion? Everything is. The sword spirit girl answered without hesitation. All of you, back off a little. I'll try to see if I can break this illusion. Wait, according to the plot of horror movies, once you touch this illusion, the other party will discover us, right? Chen Tuo suddenly said. I think it's better to take the long view. Master, you seem to have said it a little too late. The Emperor's sword spirit turned around awkwardly. Following her words, the surrounding environment suddenly changed. It was no longer the bright and grand tent with simple decorations that looked refreshing and generous. Instead, it returned to the darkness and narrowness that a normal tent should have. What was even more unpleasant was that in addition to the entrance of the tent, the other three sides of the tent had short and long three-tiered vermilion tables placed against the walls. Many wooden tablets were placed on top of the tables in an uneven manner. It looked as if it was an ancestral hall where a memorial tablet was enshrined. Wow, this really is a scene from a horror movie. Chintua, who felt that his words had come true, scratched his head in distress. Now that things have come to this, it's too late to leave. Let's take this opportunity to search this place and see if we can find anything. Xiao Zhenyi didn't want to waste any more time and said decisively. Since the other two had followed him, they were more or less mentally prepared for this situation. Therefore, they didn't waste any time and began to search for useful clues in this changed tent. These wooden tablets all have words on them. See Cao Chen Gongwei, His Excellency Qing Zhou Shen Shilian. Is this a memorial tablet? Fang Xiaoqing guessed with uncertainty. No, to be precise, it should be the memorial tablet of a person named Chen Qingzhou. Kukao means that this person had no elders when he passed away. His Excellency is an honorific title for the deceased, and Western Lotus Tablet is a term used by Buddhists to redeem the deceased. Chen Tua picked up a memorial tablet and looked at it carefully. At the same time, he casually explained, "It's normal that you don't know. This should be more common in the countryside. My third aunt's house has this kind of memorial tablet." Do you mean that all the tablets here are the memorial tablets of the dead? Xiao Zhenyi's face darkened when he heard this. There were at least thousands of wooden tablets in this tent. If all of them were memorial tablets, it would really be a bit chilling. It would be great if that were the case. Chen Tua smiled bitterly. The words on the memorial tablets here are generally divided into two colors, white and gold. If I'm not wrong, the gold words are the real deceased, and the white words are the people who were killed by the so-called master. How do you know? Xiao Zhenyi couldn't help but ask curiously. Because I saw Ding Yang's memorial tablet. It's over there, written in white. Chen Tua pointed to a memorial tablet not far away and answered. What the hell is that, master, doing? Fang Xiaoqing still didn't understand. Looking at Xiao Zhenyi's expression, which seemed to be enlightened by Chen Tua's reminder, she couldn't help but ask. Xiaoqing, is there a ghost story in your hometown that is similar to a drowned ghost looking for a substitute? Xiao Zhenyi didn't answer her directly. Instead, he asked a question of his own. Is it the kind of story where adults scare children by saying that someone drowned in a river, and his ghost is looking for a substitute so that children don't go swimming? Hearing this, Fang Xiaoqing also seemed to understand something. She hammered her palm and said, You mean, the victims this time were actually all possessed by the original owners of the memorial tablets? That's right. This can explain how the rumor that the master is very effective came about. Even the person who received the treatment was replaced by an evil spirit for many years. Of course, whether it's effective or not is up to them. It's just a guess. But no matter what, it's better to take Ding Yang's memorial tablet with us first. We're almost ready to leave. Xiao Zhenyi carefully listened to the commotion outside. He felt that the commotion seemed to be gradually subsiding, so he made a prompt decision. Unfortunately, it was still a little too late. Unfortunately, you're not going anywhere. At this moment, a figure wearing a cloak and a hood silently appeared in the room. Although the other party didn't introduce herself, her cloak made everyone realize that this person was the final boss, the mysterious master. The first to react was Xiao Zhenyi. He almost subconsciously picked up the remaining half of the Yuan Rong sword and slashed at the other party. But before the blade touched the other party, the master stretched out his hand and made a pushing action. It was as if Xiao Zhenyi had been hit by a speeding car. His entire body flew backward and slammed heavily into the table. The three-tiered table was directly broken, and the memorial tablet placed on it smashed into his face with a crackling sound. What the F***CK, force? Chen Tuo's face was full of shock. You've actually seen that movie? The sword spirit of the Emperor's sword was full of shock. I think you're surprised in the wrong place. Fang Xiaoqing, who was also full of shock, couldn't help but complain. You dare to break into my territory, I have to admire your courage. The master slowly walked towards them, but no one dared to underestimate the power hidden in the thin body. But I have to say, you're courting death. What the hell are you? Chen Tuo seemed to have given up on struggling. He just stared at the other party and asked, "It's not too much for me to want to be a ghost before I die, right?" Humph, what a scheming brat. But if you're counting on the guy who caused a ruckus in the east to save you, I'm afraid you've miscalculated. Didn't you notice that there's no sound coming from that side? The master sneered. Fine, I'll let you die a little clearer. The so-called master was originally a ghost that wandered between the netherworld. Like most ghosts that couldn't be reincarnated, it had almost no memories of its life. It could only rely on its instincts to wander by the river of forgetfulness, day after day, year after year. Originally, as long as it fused with the other remnant souls by the river of forgetfulness, it would be able to cross the river of forgetfulness and reach the other side. But some problems occurred. A powerful existence from the world of the living occupied its vicinity. The other party's power disrupted its actions. Even if it replenished its soul, it didn't cross the river of forgetfulness. Instead, it continued to devour other remnant souls. Gradually, the remnant souls could no longer satisfy its appetite, so it even began to attack normal souls that were about to cross the river of forgetfulness. In the end, it became one of the most deformed ghosts after mixing with countless souls. Mother Ghost, if it continued to develop under normal circumstances, its deformity would definitely attract the attention of various powerful existences in the underworld, and it would be extinguished. However, about a month ago, someone managed to open the gate of the underworld nearby to a certain extent, summoning the existence entrenched at the entrance of the underworld path. And Mother Ghost took advantage of that opportunity to sneak out of the underworld. For most ghosts, sunlight was no different from poison. If they wanted to live a normal life in the world of the living, they needed a physical body. So Mother Ghost possessed an ordinary middle-aged woman and began to secretly help the woman's daily life. This made the woman quickly trust Mother Ghost and even developed a dependence on her. Mother Ghost took advantage of the moment when the woman completely let down her guard against her and devoured her soul, taking over the woman's body and becoming the owner of the body. But Mother Ghost was a combination of souls, and it was too powerful for an ordinary person's body. In addition, there was a limit to the power that she could exert alone in this world. So Mother Ghost simply created the memorial tablets that Xiao Zhenyi and the others saw. Then, she separated the souls in her body one by one and attached them to the memorial tablets. Then, one by one, she attached them to the bodies of wealthy businessmen or high-ranking officials, allowing them to gradually squeeze out the soul of the body's original owner. Once the spirit completely occupied a person's body, that person's soul would be attached to the original memorial tablet of the spirit. This way, Mother Ghost only needed to erase all of the person's memories, then devour and separate them once. Then, she would have an additional spirit that she could control. As for Ding Yan, who had a certain cultivation base, as a century-old ghost who had fused with countless souls, Ghost Mother could naturally tell that he was extraordinary at a glance. Therefore, she didn't trick him like she did with ordinary people, and then let the spirit behind him slowly occupy his body. Instead, she took advantage of his unprepared state and directly seized his body. Without waiting for the other party to finish his explanation, Chintua suddenly made his move and stabbed the Emperor's sword into the other party's head. Then, the sword spirit girl entered the sword and a sword aura suddenly appeared, instantly splitting the other party's head in half. Sorry, if it's not a movie, the explanation doesn't have invincible time. Chintua shook off the viscous dark red blood on his sword and added as if relieved of a burden. But reality did not give him the time to be proud. Kakik, kid, you're not bad. Both your mind and willpower are top-notch. Once you become my subordinate spirit, I will definitely put you in an important position. The other party's head had clearly been split in half, but she could still speak. Her tone did not even have a trace of injury. Instead, she even had the luxury of praising Chintua. This made Chintua's heart sink to the bottom. The black cloak was torn apart, revealing a horrifying body that seemed to have been skinned. Her muscle fibers, bones, and blood vessels could all be seen clearly. This was no longer the appearance of a human. Instead, it gave off the feeling of a white ant queen. The upper half of her body seemed to have been molded out of a few people like plasticine. The lower half of her body was purely made out of countless organs and flesh that were still slowly squirming. There were also a few pairs of hands on both sides of her body that acted as huge egg sacs. Isn't the brain a vital part? Being stared at by the dozens of intact eyeballs on Ghost Mother's upper body, Chintua's face could not help but turn pale. If not for the Son of Heaven's sword, he would have been unable to stand steadily. Well, if the resentment in the Son of Heaven's sword hadn't been completely dispersed, this 100-year-old brat, the sword spirit girl, who realized that her master was in a bad situation, did not look too good either. She could only hatefully say this. Feng Xiaoqing looked like she was about to vomit because of the horrifying and disgusting appearance of Ghost Mother's body. However, the female police officer's mental fortitude was still passable. She gritted her teeth and did not let herself vomit. Instead, she wrapped the thousands of gold chains plus one around her gun. In theory, this way, the bullets could hurt the spirit. Then, she nervously pointed the gun at Ghost Mother. Unfortunately, the bullet was too small to cause fatal damage to Ghost Mother. This is really the end of everything. Chintua looked around helplessly. He felt that there was no other way but to fight to the death. That's not necessarily true. Xiao Zhenyi struggled out from the pile of memorial tablets. There was still blood dripping from his forehead. He looked battered and exhausted, but a smile appeared on his face. It's about time, still not giving up? No matter what, it's impossible. Wait a minute, what's with the memorial tablet in your hand? Ghost Mother originally wanted to ridicule Xiao Zhenyi, but the dozens of eyes on her body could not help but be attracted to the memorial tablet in Xiao Zhenyi's hand. It was a memorial tablet that looked no different from an ordinary memorial tablet. If there was a difference, it would be that there were no words on it. This memorial tablet was originally written with the word white. Xiao Xingyi casually threw away the memorial tablet in his hand, wiped the blood off his face, and said with a smile, if the spirit behind the body that occupied the body was eliminated, then isn't it normal for the original soul to return to the body? No, impossible, such a thing. Ghost Mother finally began to panic. What? Haven't you noticed? From the very beginning, the reason we appeared here was to attract your attention and do our best to delay you, to prevent you from doing something desperate in desperation, such as destroying the souls of the victims. Xiao Xingyi shook his collar, revealing a small radio microphone that was not very obvious. Then, he raised the Yuan Rong sword again, but this time, there was a 50-cent bracelet plus 2 foot wrapped around the sword. So this was our mission. Chen Chua sighed. Uncle, why didn't you tell us before? I really thought we were done for, okay? Sorry, but isn't there a saying, if you want to deceive the enemy, you must first deceive your own people? Xiao Xingyi laughed and explained to the unhappy Chen Chua. I'm going to kill you. But Ghost Mother, who had been fooled, was obviously in a bad mood. In her anger, all the ghosts in the red memorial tablets were summoned. Countless ghosts floated in the air, and the gloomy ghost energy caused the surrounding temperature to drop by nearly 10 degrees. Fang Xiaoqing couldn't help but shiver. Just as the evil ghosts were about to pounce on them under Ghost Mother's command and devour them, the tent was destroyed. It was as if a force 12 wind blew past everyone's scalps without warning, and the tent was directly swept away, along with the hundreds of ghosts. Sorry. In the direction of the wind, Xiao He slowly trotted over with cat steps. I seem to be a little late. Too slow. Xiao Xingyi couldn't help but complain. If I didn't talk to buy time, we would have been wiped out. Sorry, it took me a lot of time to get rid of the ghosts one by one, and to modify the memory of the victims who were still alive. Xiao He laughed. Also, your earpiece was very painful when it was clipped to my ear, so I threw it away after listening to this guy's explanation. Is that okay? That thing is very expensive, okay? Forget it, it can be reimbursed at public expense this time anyway. Ghost Mother couldn't believe her eyes as she looked at the man and the cat chatting like old friends. Was it this cat that had ruined all his plans? However, just as she was about to make trouble, she found that she couldn't even move a single tentacle in front of the cat. Soul creatures were often the most sensitive creatures. Without the restraint of a physical body, they could more clearly perceive the strength of others. Even if Ghost Mother had made herself such a physical body in order to live in the world of the living, she still retained her instincts as a ghost. Even if there was no way to perceive the strength of the black cat, her instincts made her feel as if she had encountered the most powerful predator in the netherworld. She couldn't even raise the thought of resistance. What kind of monster was this cat? If there's nothing else you want to say, then let's call it a day. Although the black cat's face was expressionless, Ghost Mother couldn't help but feel that the cat seemed to be smiling ominously. How dare you play this kind of game in my territory? I'll return your words to you. You're digging your own grave. Before Ghost Mother could react, Su Xingxing's cat claw had completely wiped her out of existence. Chapter 194. Did you see the instructor's twisted face? It's so scary. I wonder what will happen to Su Xingxing. Monkey, who was as skinny as ever, said with joy. At Jiangjin University in the late summer, Monkey and Fatty walked together on the tree-lined road back to the dormitory. As hardcore comrades who had failed the advanced mathematics exam together, they had to attend tutoring and make up exams even during the summer vacation. In addition to them, there were many students who had failed, but only Su Xinxing was special. That guy had missed nearly half of the tutoring sessions. Because of this, the tutor, who was already unhappy that he had to rush to school to teach the last-place students in the hot summer, naturally wouldn't let go of this opportunity to make a fuss. Even the instructor of their class was annoyed. He almost took a kitchen knife and went to Su Xinxing's house. But to be honest, since Fusang came back and showed her face, old Su has been out of contact for half a month, right? Is there really no problem? Fatty couldn't help but worry a little. There's no problem. I called his phone, and he said he was just busy with some things. Monkey looked indifferent. He didn't worry about Su Xinxing, who had stolen his sweetheart. Wait, from what you said, the person who answered the phone wasn't old Su himself? Fatty asked curiously. Yes, it was Su Xinxing's sister. It's a lovely voice as always. Monkey covered his face and made a bashful expression. Your expression is so disgusting. Even the cat lying on the branch is looking at you with contempt. Fatty's eyebrows twitched, and he silently distanced himself from Monkey. What look of disdain! Cats have facial paralysis to begin with. Monkey didn't care. He followed Fatty's gaze and found a Xiaohei cat lying on the branch of a sycamore tree not far away. The tree branch wasn't that tall, and it was within the reach of one's hand. For this kind of stray cat, as long as you feed it something, it will get close to you. If you don't believe me, I still have half a sausage bread left from lunch. As he spoke, Monkey rummaged through the shoulder bag at his waist. Then, he took out a soft sausage bread wrapped in plastic paper with only half of it left. When he opened the transparent plastic, a strange smell spread out. Ah, this thing can't be eaten anymore, right? Fatty pinched his nose and distanced himself a little further. Then, he tried to remind his comrade tactfully. It's okay, it's for the cat anyway. Monkey hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he still raised the half piece of sausage bread towards Xiaohei. Then, the loaf of bread was quickly knocked away by the black cat, who looked lazy just now, with a meatball, and it fell on the monkey's face. Ah! The sour smell is rushing into my nose. Monkey, whose face was covered in bread, rolled on the ground exaggeratedly. Remember to throw away the bread when you're done playing. Fatty looked at his comrade helplessly and could only remind him from the side. That damned black cat actually dared to reject my good intentions. Monkey struggled to pull the rotting bread off his face as he was about to suffocate. He angrily rushed towards the cat on the branch and raised his fist. However, the cat once again calmly stretched out 2 meatballs. Ah! My eyes! Monkey knelt on the ground, covered his eyes and cried out in pain. Hey, are you okay? I think I heard a poof sound. It seems like it was poked quite deeply. Fatty asked worriedly. Damn it! Just a cat. After his vision returned to normal, Monkey looked at the cat angrily. Why don't we just let it go? Fatty tried his best to persuade. What kind of joke is this? How could I? Wait a minute, is that song you? Just as Monkey was about to give an impassioned speech, he was startled by the girl who walked past the fork in the road. Could it be that she also failed some of her classes? Don't talk nonsense, she's a top student who even got a scholarship. Fatty seriously corrected him. I heard that the school will be organizing some activity in 2 days, and the leaders hope that song you can participate in the performance. Didn't they always ask the Chang Shaoxian to do this in the past? The Chang Xiaoxian also seems to have a performance, but Song Yu is the finale. Think about it, it's not like we didn't see how popular she was a while ago. It's not like we didn't use such a good publicity resource for free, right? Bah, those old perverts who use their position for personal gain. Monkey was indignant. Alright, don't talk nonsense, it's just a normal performance, okay? As the two chatted, Monkey forgot about the black cat and slowly walked back to the dormitory with Fatty. Only Xiaohei the cat was lying on the branch, as if it was listening to their conversation. After they were a certain distance away, Xiaohei the cat lightly jumped down from the branch and landed on the ground with perfect movements. Then it ran in the direction that the girl had just walked. Song Yu was a bit irritated these few days. Of course, it wasn't because of her relatives, but because she hadn't seen Su Xinxing in a while. These 2 days, even if she went to Ying's apartment, she would only see Mo Li, who was playing on the computer. Although the little girl said confidently that Su Xinxing had something to do and would be back soon, the girl was still a bit worried since he hadn't appeared for so long. Just when she was feeling so vexed, the school actually called her out and asked her to sing for the finale of some evening party later. It wasn't that she couldn't contribute to her alma mater, but if she was asked to do something like this, even Song Yu would be unhappy. After this performance, she would go talk to her teacher and ask her not to participate in these kinds of activities anymore. The girl made up her mind. At this time, she suddenly felt a furry feeling on her ankle. The girl's first reaction was caterpillar, but considering her image as a goddess in school, she didn't yell out. Instead, she looked down in fear. The result made her sigh in relief. It wasn't a caterpillar that she was afraid of, but a Xiaohei the cat. Its fur was fine, but its fur was a bit thin. At this moment, the Xiaohei the cat made a gurgling sound from its throat. The girl picked it up and said, "Are you comforting me?" "Thanks, little guy." Song Yu didn't know why, but she suddenly felt that this cat looked a bit like her sweetheart that she hadn't seen for a few days. "Okay, if you're a boy, I'll call you Su Jinyan. If you're a girl, I'll call you Su Peiyu." After thinking about it, she realized that the villa she was living in didn't have any rules against pets, so the girl decided to take this Xiaohei the cat home. She smiled and looked at its furry face. "Hey, little guy, do you have fleas?" "Forget it, whether you have them or not, I'll take you to take a bath first. I've accumulated 3 gifts. Thank you to COC, Eridion, Unprincipled Entanglement, City of Shadows, Jianjiao, Higan of Starry Sky, Non-Toxic Chinese Group, I've seen your books, Novel Lover, Feather Slasher, Wang Cheng Chang'an, Qin Xingxi, Happy Clapper, Wooden Knight, Bat Loli on the Big Crane, Batgirl is an Angel Meow, Haryuku, Wandering Octopus in the Stars, Normal ID, Lulakan Yu, She Wei's Lowly Wife Batgirl, 0 Hour Butterfly, Solomon Mad Dog, Batgirl is living well, Purple Sister is 17 years old, Frost. Fantasy, Shadow Bird, ZCO 12345, Reverie, Tang Dynasty's Third Dragon Smuff, Passing Scars, Fu Empress, Beifeng Changzhua, Nope Magic Magician, Bookman 14156611970, Rusty Rock, Destiny's Edge, Wang Chan from Wang Xing, Bat's ID is Abnormal, Recovery, G, Vanguard of the Guild, Wu-Tun, 7 Luminaries, Madness in the Fourth Space, Not Small White, Saint Radiant, Memories Sting, Kuei-Tori, Tanuki, Majestic, ZXXXXXS, Bats Back Super Tight, Yi, Photographer from Centris Ragnar. K, there's something under Batgirl's skirt, Clam Bookman, Strategic Clam Army, Long Time Gone Batgirl, Batgirl Among Us, Iguain, Single Dog Season, Yuckelwood, Broken, Odd Eye, When Moral Integrity Falls, Batgirl with a White Body, Elegy of the Lost Brave, Don't Hear, Smell, Touch, or Lick, Batgirl's Lack of Value, Highway, Silent Blockman, Batgirl in Devil's Clothing, Island Kaze Class 1 Destroyer. Tufeng Shirsi, Flameless, Xiaoxiang Feather, Ederty, Mothership, Chi-Chi Prologue, True Love Wind, Bookman 3853033337, Speed Snail, Al 203, Thoughts of Hope, Blue Wings, Your Cute Pill, Toilet Lid, Spring Breeze Combing Rain, Blue Starsky, Twilight Tower of the Stars, Jucha, 60 Yuan, Xiao Ryu Zua, Existence is Reasonable, Blood River of the Shadows, Susuda Hinata, Benevolence is Righteous, Colorful Humanoid, Bookman 5549522035, The Last Roman The Old Hunter's Sword Will Never Die, Burn Imagination. Jed 05, Bozel, Hongmeng, Nothingness, Abortion Batgirl, Bat Dances with the Sinful Bag, Don't Be Lonely Batgirl, Random Call Me Casually, Batgirl Licking My Crotch, Cloud Watching Waste, Claire, Acid Wash, High As You, Intentional Return, Anna Charisse, Shikort, MDXCZ, Papa Papa, Batgirl, Dried Tofu, Warito, I Wanna Have a Sister. Reino, Yuhuan Hansha, Lin Xinyue, Academia Gentleman, Yuan Chinyin, Bane, Magtroid, My Harem, Mrs. Brand Rice Ball, Kun Peng, Altori, Pandora, Flightless Snail, 39, Beyond Heaven, Xiling Apostle Moritip. Chapter 195. The situation wasn't good. Su Xinxing, who had originally planned to eat at Song Yu's place, found that the current situation seemed to be beyond his expectations. The other party was now full of interest and wanted to take a bath with him, in cat form. Even if he tried to resist, it would have little effect. After all, it was too difficult to control his strength without hurting the other party. This made Su Xinxing feel a little helpless. There was no other way. It seemed that this freeloading plan had to be stopped. Thinking of this, Su Xinxing jumped out of the girl's hands and quickly ran to the window. Then, with a pia sound, it hit the spotless window glass that was completely unrecognizable. You actually hate taking a bath with me that much? Song Yu's shoulders drooped as she was hit hard. She picked up Xiao Hei, who was relieved that she didn't break the glass. Forget it, I heard that kittens can't take too many baths. It's a little late today. Let's go buy a flea ring tomorrow. Hearing that the girl had given up on her dangerous plan, Su Xinxing was finally relieved. Song Yu rummaged through the storage room and found a cardboard box. Then, she patted some clothes that weren't too shabby. She put Xiao Hei inside and went to the bathroom to take a bath. How should he put it? Su Xinxing felt that he couldn't calm down. Logically speaking, it wasn't like he hadn't seen a girl's body before. Emily also often took baths with him. But for some reason, this situation had a different kind of romantic feeling. Maybe he should just sleep. Lying in the cardboard box and closing his eyes for a while, Su Xinxing realized that he seemed to be a little wrong. The clothes in the cardboard box had a pleasant floral fragrance. It might be the smell of laundry detergent or shampoo, but Su Xinxing had smelled a similar fragrance on Song Yu's body before. Not only was sleeping on top of the cardboard box unable to calm down, but it also made his imagination run wild. So, when Song Yu finished her bath and walked out of the bathroom in her pajamas, she saw Xiao Hei facing the corner of the wall. She seemed to be a little self-deprecating, as if she was reflecting on herself. After playing with Xiao Hei for a while, it was time for dinner. Since there was no cat food at home, just as Su Xinxing had expected, he was fed chicken breast meat by the girl. Although she didn't add much salt, it was almost tasteless. Even so, it was still much better than the instant noodles that Mo Li, that little idiot, made at home. Qin Xingyan hadn't returned yet, and Chihaya Fukuyama seemed to be staying at the earth goddess Loli's house to learn some things about being a god. However, in 2 days, Asahi Sakura Kanji would come to Jiangjin. At that time, he would be able to end his homeless days. Su Xinxing, who was full, was lying on the girl's bed. His brain, which was a little slow because of the full meal, was thinking lazily. Song Yu, on the other hand, was leaning against the white soft leather headboard. She was half sitting on the bed. In front of her was a lazy table and a laptop. She seemed to be searching for something on the computer. Just as Su Xinxing was about to fall asleep because of the comfortable air conditioning, the girl suddenly hugged him in her arms. As a cat, he could also see the computer screen. There was a page for a furniture store on the screen. "Little kitty, what do you think of this cabinet?" Song Yu happily patted his head and asked. Su Xinxing's ears drooped as he yawned. After seeing the string of zeros on the price column, he lost interest in this thing. "I knew you would like it." She didn't notice the black cat's lazy appearance at all. The girl was immersed in her own fantasy. This color scheme is very compatible with the decorations in Sakura's apartment. The girl's next sentence made Su Xinxing a little concerned. Speaking of which, Song Yu seemed to have stuffed a lot of furniture, pillows, and other messy things into Sakura's apartment. Recently, even the kitchen had a lot of utensils. It wasn't that it was a hindrance. It was better to say that she did this to make the house more comfortable. Su Xinxing was also very welcoming at first, because he didn't need to spend his own money. However, after seeing the price of this cabinet, he felt that it was a little inappropriate. Song Yu didn't notice the change in Su Xinxing's expression. She was only focused on laughing foolishly at the black cat. "Hee, one day, the furniture in Sakura's apartment will be sent by me. At that time, in a sense, I can also be regarded as the hostess." So that's what she was thinking. No. When Su Xinxing didn't know how to complain, the girl let go of the black cat and gently patted her cheek. "In order to be worthy of him, I have to study harder." After that, the girl opened a website. Su Xinxing glanced at the website introduction and found that it seemed to be a video website that taught some housework skills through video. And what Song Yu was learning was the advanced version of the skills brides must master, Advanced Tailoring Skills, 32. Judging from the progress bar, this thing was actually 3 hours long. The girl got up from the bed, ran to the cabinet next to her, and took out a set of sewing tools and various colors of cloth from it. Even if it was just a glimpse, Su Xinxing could see that the cabinet was full of various knitwear and sewing products, but judging from their degree of completion, most of them could only be regarded as failed products. But now the girl's movements and skills seemed to be very skilled. Even Su Xinxing, who had some ability in housework, couldn't find many flaws. If one looked carefully, one could also find that the girl's originally smooth and delicate hands had unknowingly appeared calluses. Su Xinxing always felt that if he continued to stay here, there would be a subtle sense of guilt in his heart. But before he could leave, Song-yu caught him again and put a cowboy-style jacket on him, who was only a black cat at the moment, rather than saying that it was cute. Hee, it was originally for me and... The girl's small face blushed, and seemed to omit something, and then said, "It's for children. Now, after a little modification, you can also wear it." "And, not bad, isn't it very handsome?" Song-yu smiled and put a cowboy hat and a pair of small boots made of unknown cloth on the black cat. This made the current Su Xinxing feel absolutely right if he stood up and said that it was noon. After doing all this, she immersed herself in learning again. Su Xinxing, on the other hand, was stunned for a long time. In the end, he quietly left the villa through the living room window. Then, he found a suspicious black cat on the street and beat it up without saying a word. Then, he took it to Song-yu's house and warned the trembling cat to listen to its owner. Originally, Su Xinxing wanted to take off his clothes and let that fellow wear it, but in the end, he hesitated for a long time, sighed, and finally quietly left Song-yu's house wearing that set of clothes. Chapter 196. After turning into a cat, Su Xinxing didn't have to walk on 4 legs like a real cat. The reason why he acted like that before was purely to avoid being seen and causing a commotion. However, it was rare for him to get a set of clothes from Song-yu. If he continued to act like a normal cat, he would feel that something was wrong, because this set of clothes only had a pair of shoes. Well, although there seemed to be something wrong, Su Xinxing still started to walk on 2 legs like the cat in Shrek. Of course, this didn't mean that the danger of being seen and causing a commotion was reduced. In fact, it was more suspicious. Since Xiao Xingyi's house was in a densely populated urban area, for the sake of insurance, he probably couldn't go there in the future. Similarly, he couldn't go to the office of the Special Case Investigation Team. Su Xinxing suddenly realized that he could only go back to Sakura apartment in the suburbs and live on Mo Li's instant noodles for a living. Even so, the suburbs weren't really deserted. If he didn't want to be seen, he could only rely on his outstanding physical ability to run back at close to the first speed in the universe. The reaction speed of the human eye was about 1/24th of a second, which meant that as long as he passed through the vision of ordinary people in this time zone, he wouldn't be noticed. To be honest, for Su Xinxing, this wasn't too difficult. But when he was ready and took the first step, he found that he had neglected a considerable problem. Ever since he had turned into a cat, he had never walked upright on his 2 legs, so he still subconsciously used the movement habits of a human. The problem was that the structure of a cat's leg was not only different from that of a human's leg, but also the length. Chapter 197. This feeling of déjà vu? Could it be another hero summoning? Although he said so, even if he was a magic idiot, Su Xinxing still understood that this summoning technique was not the same type of hero summoning he had experienced before. The summoning magic that Su Xinxing was first summoned to aura via was a type of teleportation magic. Simply put, it was to pull the target from another world into a magic array. But after Su Xinxing experienced a series of adventures and became a real hero, he was immune to almost all magic, including teleportation magic. Therefore, in order to find a way to return to Earth, Su Xinxing suffered a lot, and he even almost gave up returning to Earth, and this time, he also came to this world. Obviously, this summoning magic was not teleportation magic, but dimensional magic that connected the 2 worlds. If teleportation magic was a box elevator, this magic was equivalent to creating a door. Su Xinxing could not take the elevator because of personal reasons, but if it was just walking through a door, it was still possible. And compared to the summoning magic that could select a target and teleport accurately 3 years ago, this magic was obviously much simpler and crude. After all, judging from the center of the magic array, the target of this summoning should be the 3 little guys, and Su Xinxing was also brought over. In addition, this world was a bit strange. The first thing that could be confirmed was that this was not Auravia, because Su Xinxing had left a lot of mythical enchantments that could be maintained permanently in that world during his adventures. If he returned there, he would definitely be able to perceive those enchantments, but there was no such feeling here at all. However, this should not be a place he had never been to before, because he could vaguely feel some familiar aura. Could it be the Thalatis world? The Demon King who invaded Auravia came from a world called the Great Demon Realm. Su Xinxing's final adventure in another world was to break into the Great Demon Realm with his companions, kill the last king of the Demon Realm, subdue the will of the world, and then escape from that world before the Great Demon Realm was destroyed. But on the way to the Great Demon Realm, they had discovered the real secret of this world that could continuously produce Demon King level powerhouses. It turned out that the Great Devil Realm would consciously draw close to other small worlds, and then the Devil Realm King would send Devil Kings to invade and conquer that world. The conquered world would be devoured by the Great Demonic Realm and finally turned into a beautiful pearl the size of a fist, displayed in the exhibition cabinet of the King of the Demonic Realm. However, these worlds that were stacked in the grid were not destroyed. Instead, they became the energy source of the Great Devil Realm. The Great Devil Realm extracted the world's power to create Devil King-level powerhouses to conquer other worlds. And those worlds that were used as batteries were called Lattice Worlds by someone in the Salvation Team. If Su Xinxing did not succeed in saving Auravia, it would probably be made into a lattice world and displayed as food for the Great Demon Realm. In order to solve this problem once and for all, Su Xinxing took his friends in Auravia through more than 9,000 lattice worlds, defeated the Devil Kings that dominated those worlds one by one, and liberated all those worlds. Of course, because most of the world's power was extracted by the Great Demon Realm, the flow of time in those worlds was much faster than in the Great Demon Realm. Therefore, after about half a month in the outside world, Su Xinxing's group completed the liberation of 9,000 worlds. And now, this world had a subtle and familiar aura, but it did not belong to Auravia. It was probably one of the lattice worlds that had been saved before. That's how it is. If possible, can you please become a hero and defeat the Devil King to save this world? While Su Xinxing was in a daze, the world introduction on the other side seemed to have ended. The next words should be something like a beginner's guide, right? The one who spoke was a young girl with long, wavy green hair and almond-colored eyes. She was wearing a snow-white dress that was reminiscent of ancient Greece. Just now, Su Xinxing had vaguely heard the word princess. Combined with the fact that they were now in a magnificent palace, he was almost certain of the other party's identity. No problem. He did not know what the princess said just now, but in short, Yi Qing, who was summoned as a hero, was already excited and answered loudly without hesitation. Wait a minute, idiot Yi Qing, don't casually play hero. I agree, this is too dangerous for Yi Qing classmate. Coming here with Yi Qing, the two girls who were originally like fire and water now had a rare unity of opinion. Because they had personally experienced the inconceivable summoning, they did not suspect it as a prank, but instead began to persuade the boy. Little Qian, Shuiyao, I did not decide to become a hero just to play hero. The boy shook his head, took a step forward, and said in a firm tone, "You should all know that my father was a narcotics officer when he was alive, right? I grew up watching his back. So even today, when justice is mocked and ridiculed, I still yearn for justice. To be able to save the people of a world in one go, I will definitely not let go of this opportunity to carry out justice." Su Shinshin crouched on the ground and slightly recognized the other party's expression, and found that the look of righteousness was not faked. The two girls looked at each other, and then both showed a helpless smile at the same time. Really, the princess over there, other than being a hero, must have a profession that can help save the world. The arrogant girl named Little Qian stopped smiling and asked the princess from another world, for example, a magician or something like that? Little Qian? I Ching was stunned. Because I Ching is a big idiot, without me watching, he might not even know if someone sold him. In order to keep the promise with Uncle Yi, I can only act with you, right? The girl put her hands on her hips and said rudely, not giving I Ching a chance to refute. "If that's the case, then I can only join. Please help me change my profession to a priest." Not to be outdone, another girl who looked like an ice beauty said, "I think I Ching classmate will have a need for this kind of holiness." Physiologically, whisper. I don't even have the desire to complain anymore. Little Qian sighed and muttered helplessly, "Can't you be more sensitive to the situation when you are in heat?" "Hey, Lin Qian is actually from the Yaohe sect." "Ah, shut up, you perverted fool." Seeing the two girls quarreling again, I Ching, who was originally a little touched, could only laugh bitterly and explain to the princess, who was at a loss, "Please don't mind them, this is their unique way of interacting with each other." Is that so? The way you communicate with each other is really intense. Speaking of which, what does Yaohe mean? The princess asked in a low voice, a little embarrassed. Please forget this word. I Ching almost hit his head on the floor. Oh, that. Hero, I have another question. What is it? I Ching looked at the curious princess and asked cautiously. That strange creature, the princess pointed at Su Shinshin, is it also a specialty of your world? Chapter 198. Why is there a cat here? After turning around and finding Su Shinshin, who had been doing nothing since the beginning, the arrogant girl blinked her eyes and said with a frown. A creature of this world. Judging from the pet costume, I don't think so. Xia Shuayao looked at Su Shinshin's jeans that didn't fit him well and raised her eyebrows slightly. He must have been involved in the summoning spell and transmigrated with us. I Ching smiled bitterly and came to Su Shinshin's conclusion. I'm sorry, kitty. I'm afraid you'll have to be separated from your original owner for a while. Su Shinshin's back answered him. The princess of this world looked at the disappointed hero, I Ching. Am I hated by cats? Then she looked at Su Shinshin, who was in his black cat form, and asked curiously, Are the cat fur in your world so sparse? This might be a mix between a sphinx hairless cat and a dragonly cat. Xia Shuayao spouted nonsense with a straight face. The princess of this world could only say, although I don't understand, it seems so powerful. After a small commotion, the princess's reception of the hero of this world was on the right track. As heroes, they were definitely different from ordinary militia. They had some extraordinary abilities, whether it was magic, physical strength, or intelligence. But the specific differences could only be found after a test. Miss Lin Qianqian, Magic. Magic power. 530,000 rings. The old man who was conducting the test for them, who looked like a magician, exclaimed in disbelief. Suddenly, the palace was filled with the whispers of magicians. In order to activate the summoning spell, the princess seemed to have invited all the high-level magicians in the country to the palace. Ring was a magic unit in this world. Apart from the archmages, the court magicians who stood at the top of the magicians generally had about 300 to 500 rings. By the way, there was nothing in this world that could withstand the magical power that came from Mo-Li in Su Xinxing's body. Therefore, even if Su Xinxing went up to test it, other than making the crystal ball emit a dazzling light and turn into ashes, nothing else could be tested. Miss Xia Xueyao's magic power is 370,000 rings. Although it's not as good as Miss Lin Qianqi's, it's still a very impressive number. By the way, is this magic conductor broken? The two numbers that had never been seen before made the old magician gasp in amazement. At the same time, he couldn't help but wonder if the magic device he used for the test was working properly. However, after testing it and finding that his mana was still the same 462 rings that had remained unchanged for 10,000 years, he finally gave up on the idea that there was a problem with the device, and could only sigh that, as expected of the hero's companion. Even the princess's beautiful eyes were filled with hope. If it's us, maybe we can. All in all, almost everyone began to look forward to how terrifying I Ching's magic power was. Lady I Ching's magic power is. After the white-bearded old magician tested I Ching, he seemed as if he couldn't believe his eyes. After hesitating for a moment, he read out the number, 0 rings. Like a stone thrown into a calm lake, his words immediately caused a burst of exclamations in the palace. Suddenly, the palace became as noisy as the market at Airlie Bridge. Even Su Xinxing, who had been watching coldly from the sidelines and thought that he might be involved in another round of soy sauce, couldn't help but be surprised. In theory, magic power was a power derived from life force. Although there were differences in quality and quantity, everyone should have magic power. Even Su Xinxing, who was a magic idiot, was only diagnosed as slim-level magic power when he transmigrated to Auravia for the magic power test. Well, at least this indirectly proved that this world of swords and magic was not Auravia. After careful consideration, Su Xinxing finally felt that it might be that the magic power test in this world was not accurate. For example, I Ching's magic power was 0. 1 ring, but the minimum requirement to be tested was 1 ring. Therefore, there was this no magic power situation. In contrast, Auravia was much simpler and more straightforward. Everything below a certain magnitude was classified as slim level. What? I was looking forward to seeing how powerful this so-called new hero is. In the end, it's just a joke. A slightly disappointed voice sounded from above the palace. For some reason, this voice seemed to have an overwhelming presence. Just a moment ago, the palace was still noisy because of the mage's whispers, but in the next moment, the noise was drowned out by this voice that wasn't too loud. Almost everyone looked up and saw a little girl with demon wings sitting on the chandelier, shaking her lotus-like legs. Her cute face was full of disappointment. After seeing her, Su Xinxing, who had been guessing which world this was, showed an icy expression on his face. After all, compared to the characteristics of this world, the appearance of a lowly was easier to remember. Although he might have met the princess before, the biggest characteristic of humans was that they had a short shelf life. At least, Su Xinxing could not recognize her now. In this regard, the 10,000-year-old lowly of the demon race had the advantage of being familiar with her face. The princess, who had been amiable all this time, showed a hostile expression at this moment. She stared coldly at the little girl. One of the 4 legendary generals of the old Demon King's era, the blood-burning Soraya. Why are you here? Of course, I'm here to see what your so-called hero's summoning is all about. The little girl did not seem to notice the princess's hostility at all. She was still cheerful as she said, after all, if you can really summon that hero from back then, we can only surrender. But, now, how dare you? Even if Lady Yi Qing does not have any magic power, Miss Lin Qianqian's magic power is more than 500,000 rings, and Miss Xia Shuiao's magic power is close to 400,000 rings. The white-bearded old man blew his beard and glared as he roared, even the 4 demon generals of the past are only SOSO in terms of magic power. Did you make a mistake somewhere? The only one of the 4 legendary generals who was defeated by you humans, Zod, has about 450,000 rings of magic power. The little girl naturally did not classify Su Xinxing, who had defeated the entire demon race, as a human. She jumped down from the chandelier with a whoosh sound. Other than Su Xinxing, who was still leisurely sighing, "Ah, damned pumpkin pants," the magicians below her stumbled and crawled to make a circular space for her. But when did you think that the other 3 of us have the same level of magic power as that useless Zod? As she spoke, she deliberately placed her hand on the instrument. The runes on the crystal ball kept flashing, and in the end, the entire crystal ball became as dazzling as an incandescent lamp. More than 1,000,000 rings of magic power. How is that possible? The old man's whole body withered. The difference was too big. Although it's disappointing, since I'm here, I won't make a wasted trip. The little girl withdrew her hand. Then, with a wave of her small white hand, a blood-red scythe of the Grim Reaper appeared in her hand. She revealed a cute smile that made everyone tremble in fear. I'll just collect a little interest. Protect the heroes and leave this place. The princess made a prompt decision. At the same time, her hand flashed with an emerald green magic light. It seemed that she was going to stay and fight. But it was of no use. When the little demon girl named Soraya waved the blood-red scythe at the 2 girls from another world, almost everyone heard the knell of death. Chapter 199. Yi Qing could not move. All the muscles in his body were trembling, not out of fear, but because he had lost the ability to move in the face of pure killing intent. If he had not already faced death, let alone the ability to move, his mind would have gone blank, and he would have lost the ability to think. But when the demon girl aimed her killing intent at Yi Qing's 2 childhood friends, Yi Qing's body finally broke through the fear of death and regained his freedom. But Yi Qing was just an ordinary person. He did not even have a strong magic power like Lin Qianxi and the others. Wanting to rely on a human's physical strength to deal with a demon was simply a fantasy. But even so, Yi Qing had no reason to give up. He casually grabbed the decorative long silver candlestick beside him and pulled out the candle, intending to use it as a handgun. At this time, the black cat that came from Earth like him suddenly jumped onto his shoulder, catching him off guard and causing him to stagger. But the arrow was already knocked, and Yi Qing did not have the leisure to pull the cat down. He could only use salted fish thrust at the demon girl. But at this moment, Yi Qing noticed that the other party had a sinister smile that was the opposite of her sweet appearance. He had been tricked. The other party's original goal seemed to be him, the new hero. If he could not break free from the shackles of killing intent, then the other party would kill Lin Qianxi and the others with their magic talent. If he broke free and tried to stop her, then the other party would kill him. In a sense, it was not a loss either way. What a pity. It seemed that his journey to another world would come to an end before it had even begun. I Ching smiled bitterly in his heart. But in the next moment, an inexplicable warmth came from the black cat on his shoulder. I Ching raised his hand to block the demon girl's death scythe's blade as if he had the help of a god. Amidst the ear-piercing sound of metal, he forcibly blocked the attack. Logically speaking, the candlestick in his hand was not only made of silver, which was second only to gold in terms of ductility, but it also had a hollow pattern on it for the sake of aesthetics and for the purpose of placing fragrance. Let alone a heavy blow, it would probably bend with just a few hits. But after taking a direct hit from the demon girl, not only did the candlestick not break, there wasn't even a scratch on it. It was like a rare divine weapon. Of course, Soraya would not stop attacking after failing to hit I Ching. Instead, she waved her scythe at I Ching from different directions in a dazzling manner. Because of the special structure of the scythe, the attack route of this weapon was quite tricky, and it could catch all close combat professions off guard and make them suffer a great loss. However, I Ching was able to predict the opponent's attack trajectory and deflect all of the opponent's attacks with the candlestick. The speed at which the two of them were exchanging blows became faster and faster, to the point where it exceeded the visual capabilities of ordinary people. Can you see it? Don't be silly. Even if I use Eagle Eye, I can't see it. This level of attack and defense has already reached the level of a sword saint, right? As expected of a brave warrior. At first, the surrounding magicians were bewildered, but they soon became happy. At least this time, they wouldn't be wiped out by that demon's sneak attack, right? Even the demon girl showed a surprised expression. The previous attacks were not only physical attacks, but also quite powerful magic, but still did not cause any damage to the boy named I Ching. You're not bad. Soraya unexpectedly put away her scythe. Although I still want to fight for a while, there's no point in continuing. And if I'm surrounded by human powerhouses, it'll be a bit troublesome. Let's call it a day. Boy, what's your name? I Ching. I Ching. I'll remember it. Let's leave the outcome of our battle for another time. After saying that, she smiled faintly and disappeared into the wisdom eye. A moment later, the magicians burst into cheers for their new hero. Amazing! You're so amazing, stupid I Ching. Lin Qianqian muttered in disbelief. Then, influenced by the atmosphere, she ran to I Ching and said, "When did you become so powerful?" As expected of classmate I Ching, I've become more excited, in the sense of sex. Xia Shuayao also floated over and congratulated in her own way. I Ching could only reply with a wry smile. That's not good. At this time, the princess walked over and pretended to be angry. The demons asked for your name, how can you say it so casually? This kind of name has power. If they use it to curse you, it'll be troublesome. What? Stupid I Ching, are you okay? Lin Qianqian hurriedly asked. We need to give I Ching a detailed body check. Please provide us with a room. Xia Shuayao also said with a serious face. I'm fine, thank you for the reminder. I Ching hurriedly laughed, then gave the two girls a look and said, But your highness, Shuayao is right, we are indeed a bit tired. Can you provide us with 3 rooms? Of course. Follow my maids and you will be able to enter the rooms that have been prepared for you. The princess would naturally agree to such a small request. Lin Xianxian and Xia Shuiyao did not return to their rooms, but followed Yi Qing into his room. "Idiot Yi Qing, did you have something to say to us?" As childhood sweethearts who had been together for more than 5 years, Lin Xianxian naturally understood the look in Yi Qing's eyes. "Hey, aren't you going to solve classmate Yi Qing's physiological problem?" Xia Shuiyao looked surprised. After a while, they finally returned to the main topic. "That, you helped me just now, right?" Yi Qing asked Xiao He, who was placed on the bed. "Oh? I thought you didn't notice," Su Xinxing said with a playful look. The cat spoke. Lin Xianxian was shocked. Shocked. Xia Shuiyao looked calm. It was indeed Su Xinxing who helped just now. He cast a blessing of the battle god on Yi Qing. This blessing was originally called Blessing of the Warrior Soul, and its effect was to give the user the combat experience and fighting ability equivalent to a master. Moreover, the user would be able to fight to the death without giving up. However, after Su Xinxing obtained the warlord's name, the effect of the blessing changed, so he simply changed the name. The candlestick was also blessed with an indestructible blessing. Although it did not have any other special effects, it would not be destroyed by weapons and attacks below the level of divine artifacts. In some ways, it could be considered an epic weapon. "You came here from Earth with us, right?" Yi Qing asked again. "May I ask what kind of cat you are?" "Bengal leopard cat." "No, I'm not asking about your breed. Is it really okay to change your breed to the most expensive type of cat?" Yi Qing said with a bitter smile. "Introduce yourselves again." Su Xinxing sighed and then said half-truthfully, "I'm the former hero's familiar. You can call me Xiao He." Chapter 200. The Demon King had made a comeback. However, unlike the terrifying war 15 years ago, where the Demon King ruled the entire world in just a few months, the Demon King's army's offensive this time was not so sharp. After nearly a year, they had only invaded nearly 1/5 of the humans' territory. Although it was a disaster for the countries that bore the brunt of the attack, the people at the rear did not have any deep understanding of it. After all, it had been 15 years, and even the pain had begun to fade. Not to mention, in this world where the productivity was only slightly stronger than in the Middle Ages, the human lifespan was not long. 15 years was equivalent to a quarter of an ordinary person's life. Also, Deja was a small town near the eastern edge of the Frost Eagle Empire. Because of its unique geographical location bordering the rich resources of the Gloom Forest in the east, this small town was considered prosperous. The Demon King's army's invasion began from the west, and the war was still far away from this small town. Therefore, this somewhat remote town's residents still maintained their original rhythm of life. "Irene, don't run around, you said you'd go back after buying the wheat flour." A scholarly blonde young man shouted to the 11 or 12-year-old girl who was watching a minstrel perform at the fountain in the central square of the town. But the girl seemed to be fascinated by the performance and did not notice that her father was calling her. Helpless, the young man could only carry the wheat flour and walk to the central square. After getting close to a certain extent, he realized that the minstrel's puppet show was the scene of the hero and his party challenging the Demon King 15 years ago. For most of the minstrel, this could be regarded as a repertoire, almost the same as the ancient storytellers of the Celestial Empire's Romance of the Three Kingdoms. "Evil Demon King, your tyranny will end here. If you are willing to surrender, I can spare your life. Don't even think about it, my rule will not be shaken." How can my ambition end because of you humans? Since you are so stubborn, then don't blame me for ending your fantasy with the sword in my hand." The minstrel said the lines vividly while skillfully using the marionette to perform a wonderful fighting scene. Seeing this scene, the blonde young man could not help but whisper softly, "That girl didn't put up any resistance at all. Back then, when His Excellency led us into Hellcrown, she very readily surrendered, okay?" "Dad, what did you say?" The little girl who finally came back to her senses and realized that her father was right beside her asked curiously. "I say, it's already very late. If you don't obediently go back with me, your mother will definitely be angry," the golden-haired youth said to the little girl with a pleasant expression. The little girl couldn't help but shiver when she recalled the terror of her mother's rage. After reluctantly looking at the puppet, she obediently ran to her father's side and planned to go home with him. "Dad, can we buy some candy?" "It can't be done because of tooth decay. Didn't your mother say that before we came out?" "What about the cheese powder?" "I want to eat Mom's pizza. I just ate yesterday, so I don't think I can do it." "What about the deluxe raspberry-strawberry syrup sundae?" "Your demands are getting higher and higher, hey?" The father and daughter had a silly conversation as they walked towards the outskirts of the town. But halfway through, the golden-haired youth suddenly stopped in his tracks. He cast a puzzled look at the three people not far away. It was a strange combination of a young man, two young girls, and a cat in clothes. Of course, what made him feel strange was not the three of them. After all, this was a magical world, and there were many abhumans in this world, so it was normal for there to be some strange people occasionally. What made the youth puzzled was that he seemed to vaguely feel a familiar wave from the three of them. It was neither magic nor combat aura. It was just like the power used by His Excellency 15 years ago. "Excuse me, are you Mr. Finn Watkins?" the young man in the lead asked with some uncertainty. "That's not right, big brother. My father is Finn Gilquet." Before the youth could answer, the little girl beside him had already said, "And isn't Finn Watkins the legendary third prince of the Frost Eagle Empire? Isn't he the hero who once broke into Hellcrown with the heroes from another world, defeated the Demon King and saved the world?" "That's right, you must have mistaken him for someone else." After being interrupted by his daughter, the golden-haired youth smiled and replied. After living a peaceful life for 15 years, he did not want his daily life to be disturbed. What's more, he did not know the purpose of these people's visit, so it was better not to expose his identity. The three of them looked at each other and seemed to be uncertain. However, just when the golden-haired youth thought that he had gotten away with it, the cat lying on the youth's shoulder suddenly spoke. "Finn, it seems that you're doing well. Gilquet, TSK, could it be that you and that guy?" "No, since this little girl called you father, could it be, this voice?" Finn was shocked and had an expression of disbelief on his face. Even if it had been 15 years, the memories of the past were still vivid in his mind, and the teachings of His Excellency the hero were still in his ears. Now that the voice had appeared again, he naturally recognized it at once. Could it be, that His Excellency? "Ho ho, you still remember my voice?" "That's right, I'm the hero's familiar," Su Shinshing said solemnly and winked at the other party. Familiar. Is that so? Although he did not know why Su Shinshing wanted to hide his identity, as a companion who once adventured with him, Finn quickly understood what he meant. "Your Excellency, what brings you here this time?" "Yes, I really have something to ask you." Su Shinxing saw that the other party did not expose him but continued with his words, so he continued, I want to ask you about the Demon King's army's comeback. If it's convenient, would you allow me to pay my respects to your wife, Alina Goquette? I understand, please do me the honor of coming to my humble home. Finn nodded, then turned his gaze to the other three people. Then these people, they are the current heroes, so it's okay to let them go together. I can guarantee that there won't be any trouble. Su Shinxing patted his chest with the meatball and promised. Since your excellency is the guarantor, then I'm relieved. Please come with me. With that said, he pulled the little girl who had not yet figured out what was going on and walked towards his home. Chapter 201. At that time, the entire human race was in danger because of the invasion of the Demon King's army. All the intelligent creatures who had not yet joined the Demon King's army formed an alliance for the first time in history to fight against the Demon King's army. But even so, it was still not enough. One of the leaders of the Demon King's army, the strongest of the 4 legendary generals, Farsilas of Iron Jade, broke our defense line alone and appeared at the first meeting of the alliance. At that time, I was the representative of the human Frost Eagle Empire. After his identity was exposed by Su Shinxing, Finn no longer continued to hide his daughter's identity. Instead, he began to boast about his glorious past. Okay, you can talk about this when you go back. Now, I have something else to ask you. Su Shinxing jumped from I Ching's shoulder to Finn's shoulder and patted him with his meatball. After feeling that it was too hard, he jumped to Finn's daughter, Irene. The little girl subconsciously reached out and hugged him in his black cat form. Then, Su Shinxing said with satisfaction, how long has it been since we left this world? Well, please don't take advantage of my daughter. Even if it's you, I'll be angry. A cross-shaped vein bulged near Finn's temple, but he still answered honestly, it's been almost 15 years since you left. Don't mess around. I just don't want to stay on a man's body. Su Shinxing waved his cat paw. As for why he did not let Lin Qianqian or Xia Shuiyao hug him, it was because the former had a look of disgust on her face, while the latter seemed to be very interested in Su Shinxing's gender. Su Shinxing felt a chill in his crotch. Out of male instinct, he did not dare to get close to the crazy woman. It's been 15 years. According to what you said, since Irene is still obediently staying in your house as a housewife, then where did the Demon King come from? Su Shinxing asked curiously. Wait a minute. I Ching, who heard the hidden message in Su Shinxing's words, could not help but ask, Mr. Xiaohei, do you mean that Mr. Finn's wife is the Demon King? Please keep your voice down. It will be very troublesome if others hear it. Finn did not seem to like this new hero very much. His expression suddenly became serious. My beloved wife and I still want to live in this town. Why are you being so fierce? This kind of thing is supposed to be kept a secret. It's your fault. Seeing I Ching's guilty expression after being scolded, Lin Qianqian immediately retorted, letting the Demon King live among a group of normal people is as dangerous as a ticking time bomb. After being evaluated as a super genius in magic and receiving a magic copy from the princess when she left the Frost Eagle Empire, Lin Qianqian had successfully learned a considerable amount of magic during her journey. Her confidence was now completely different from when she had first arrived in this world. Or rather, it was getting a little bloated. Sir, may I know what relationship you have with this young lady? Finn asked Su Shinxing with a slightly cold expression. We have no relationship at all. Or rather, if you can make this arrogant little girl suffer a little, I will be very happy. Su Shinxing, who was implicated because he also had a demon king lowly at home, revealed a tiger-like smile. What? You traitor cat! If you want to fight, then come at me. Lin Xianxian seemed to be very angry because of Su Shinxing's betrayal. Father? Finn's daughter seemed to be at a loss. It's okay, Irene. Just watch father's performance. Finn revealed his usual gentle smile and rubbed the girl's head. He then said to Lin Xianxian, fighting in this town will cause some unnecessary trouble. If you don't mind, let's go outside and fight. After saying that, he walked out with Irene. Humph! Lin Xianxian ignored Yi Qing, who wanted to be the peacemaker, and followed without fear. They found a deserted open space at the edge of the gloomy forest and prepared for battle. Lin Xianxian covered herself with a mess of magic shields to ensure that she would not be hurt even if she was hit by an intercontinental missile. Finn borrowed the one-handed sword hanging at Yi Qing's waist. It was given to Yi Qing by Her Highness the Imperial Princess when they left the castle. It had many enchantments and was very durable. It was a very good weapon. Idiot Yi Qing, you can't lend it to him. Before Yi Qing could subconsciously agree, Lin Xianxian waved the same excellent magic staff and shouted, I'm going to beat him up. As the main damage output on the journey from the imperial capital to here, the girl's combat ability had indeed improved considerably. Coupled with her outstanding achievements, her confidence had naturally swelled to the extent that she could say such words without batting an eyelid. Finn could only laugh and shake his head. He then broke off a branch from a nearby tree, peeled off the leaves and twigs, and waved it to familiarize himself with the feel of it. He then nodded with satisfaction and said, Let's begin. As soon as he finished speaking, the girl raised the magic staff in her hand, and a huge exploding fireball blasted directly at Finn. When she cast the magic shield on herself, she had even pretended to chant a spell in order to conceal her ability to cast spells without curses. She was trying to make Finn underestimate her power so that she could end the battle as quickly as possible. The exploding fireball, which was enhanced by excellent casting, exploded on the ground, setting off a heat wave that even made Yi Qing and Xia Shuiyao, who were watching the battle, involuntarily take 2 steps back. Finn's daughter, who was worried, shouted, Daddy! Su Shinxing, who was in Lin Xianxian's arms, calmly said, Don't worry. It's hard to say if the monsters in other worlds are included, but if we only talk about this world, the flames seem to have been split in half from the middle by a sword, and a blonde youth appeared in the middle, unharmed. He is the strongest. The next moment, Finn suddenly lunged forward, crossing a distance of nearly 20 meters in an instant. The withered branch in his hand pierced through countless magic shields, and went straight for Lin Xianxian's throat, who was staring wide-eyed. The outcome of the battle had been decided. Girl! Finn threw away the branch in his hand and said, You seem to have misunderstood something from the beginning. I didn't borrow that boy's sword to increase my combat strength. I just didn't want you to lose too badly. It was only now that Lin Xianxian seemed to come back to her senses. Her legs gave way and she was about to collapse to the ground. Fortunately, Yi Qing was prepared. She rushed to the girl's side and supported her. As your senior, let me give you a word of advice. Finn looked at the girl who had a fearful expression after walking around the gate of the underworld and said, Overconfidence will only lead to your own destruction. The new heroes were speechless. By the way, wasn't that what I warned you before? Su Shinxing protested. Ha ha ha, please don't mind such a small matter. Elena should have finished preparing dinner. Let's go back quickly. Finn scratched the back of his head and played dumb very skillfully. Chapter 202. Logically speaking, there were more than 9,000 lattice worlds. Even Su Xinxing could not possibly remember every lattice world. After all, there were many lattice worlds where he only appeared and killed the Demon King before leaving immediately. The reason why he had an impression of this world was not only because it was one of the earliest lattice worlds he had entered. According to the order, it was at least in the top 100. At that time, although Su Xinxing had already gathered the 12 holy swords in Auravia, his strength was not yet at the level where he could kill everything. More importantly, this world was one of the few that could be considered peaceful and liberated. At that time, the Salvation Alliance, which was mainly composed of humans, had been forced into a desperate situation. After Su Xinxing and his party appeared and achieved certain results, they had decided to gather all their forces to fight to the death. However, the Demon King suddenly withdrew his forces, gave up a large area of territory, and recalled the 4 demon generals and the 72 demon apostles back to Hellcrown. After the Salvation Alliance, which was already short of manpower, took over those territories, they fell into a predicament of a shortage of manpower. Naturally, they did not have the ability to send troops to pursue and continue to fight to the death with the Demon King's army. Even so, not many people were optimistic about the humans. After all, on the surface, the Demon King's army was far stronger than the Salvation Alliance. However, when Su Xinxing and his party arrived at Hellcrown after going through all kinds of difficulties and obstacles, the Demon King's army readily surrendered. The Demon King did not have the arrogance of most of the Demon Kings in the 9,000 lattice worlds. Instead, she was very self-aware. She knew that if Su Xinxing and his party could pass through the obstacles she set up, it meant that the Demon King's army was much stronger than hers. In order to avoid unnecessary demons sacrificing themselves, she chose to surrender. The 4 demon generals, who had the right to oppose the Demon King's decision, had been taught a lesson by Su Xinxing and his party along the way. Naturally, they knew that the Demon King's decision was not foolish. In fact, it was extremely wise. Otherwise, in just half a day, no one in Hellcrown would be able to breathe except for the hero and his party. The one who surrendered so readily back then was this Elena Goquette. After bringing the new hero and the others to Finn's house, Su Xinxing stood up and introduced the white-haired woman to Yi Qing and the others. Unlike the middle-aged Finn, Elena still looked like a young girl with her long side ponytail. But compared to the lifeless girl who sat on the Demon King's throne like a porcelain doll, Elena's expression was no different from a normal person's. She even gave off a sense of motherly kindness. To put it simply, the Lord Demon King back then had completely become someone's wife. After Finn whispered Su Xinxing's true identity to her, the former Demon King covered her cherry mouth with her hand and widened her eyes in surprise. But then she immediately smiled and nodded at him. "Long time no see, Your Excellency." Oh, long time no see. Because her temperament had changed so much, Su Xinxing thought for a moment that he had mistaken her for someone else. "Looks like you and Finn are doing well. It's all thanks to you and your friends from 15 years ago. Otherwise, I would still be bound by my duty to that painful throne." Elena, on the other hand, responded with a smile. "Oh, that's good." In this regard, Su Xinxing also felt somewhat gratified. As long as someone became happy because of his hasty actions back then the pain and suffering back then was not in vain. This time, I want to ask if you have any understanding of the current situation of the Demon King's army. After a brief exchange of pleasantries, Su Xinxing intended to get to the point. However, as soon as he finished his question, his stomach rumbled. "I've just finished cooking. Don't you want to come and eat?" Elena chuckled, her white side ponytail swaying slightly with her movements. Deference is no substitute for obedience. Su Xinxing was not pretentious. Without waiting for the new heroes to speak, he decided on his own. "I've had enough of tasteless black bread." The world's productivity was there. There were only a few kinds of dry food that could be carried on the road. It was undeniable that no matter what kind of dry food it was, it tasted very bad. "Then don't eat when I feed you," the arrogant girl, whose spirit had been dampened by the previous duel, whispered softly behind Yi Qing. Su Xinxing happily decided to ignore her. The Finn's lunch consisted of a fragrant milky white soup, freshly baked wheat bread, and steak that was fried in oil on an iron plate. Just the sight of it was enough to make one's appetite wet. Oh, oh, oh! Delicious! Su Xinxing's eyes glowed as he ate. "This is definitely above average. Thank you for your hospitality, madam." Yi Qing thanked Elena politely. "It's really delicious." "Oh, damn it, isn't this delicious?" Lin Qianqian's mouth was stuffed with steak, and she was still mumbling incoherently. She looked a little dissatisfied. "It's so much better than the bento I made." "Oh, is this the difference in the strength of a wife?" "This lunch is very good for replenishing energy." Xia Shuiyao also looked quite satisfied, but the direction of her satisfaction was not quite the same as the others. "This way, Yi Qing will have extra energy." Elena seemed to be a little embarrassed by using too much praise at once. She just smiled and nodded. "Plain tea is not enough to show my respect." "I'm very happy that you're satisfied. Elena's cooking is not bad now." In the beginning, it was really, Finn shuddered as he spoke, as if he was recalling the past that he could not bear to look back on. Even the strongest man in the world was afraid of that kind of dark cuisine from the bottom of his heart. "My dear, do you have any complaints?" Elena continued to look at her husband with a smile. Her smile did not change, but everyone felt that the atmosphere suddenly became heavy. She was indeed the Demon King. In a sense, her aura was really too strong. "No, I love everything you make." Finn immediately replied with a strong sense of righteousness. Elena was probably very satisfied with her husband's tactfulness. She then regained her previous aura, making the audience relax. "But it's really surprising." Lin Qianqian drank a mouthful of soup and chewed the soup inside. "There are fans in this world too. And this kind of chewy texture. Oh, it's really irresistible, that's a slime." The little girl Erin, who had not spoken much, suddenly said, Lin Qianqian's expression changed. "Slime? Is it that blue, sticky thing?" She had also defeated many of these low-level monsters on the way here. But because of the nature of a girl, she always felt a chill when she saw slime. It was second only to cockroaches. Because our house is very close to the gloomy forest, so in order to save money, many of the ingredients are sourced from the local area. The roasted mushrooms on the bread are the legs of the walking mushrooms, the steak is the meat of the minotaur. What's wrong with you guys? Elena explained matter-of-factly. But other than Su Xinxing, who was still eating as if nothing had happened, the new heroes did not seem to be in a good mood. May I ask where the toilet is? I Ching raised her hand and asked with a pale face. Chapter 203. After lunch, the Finns sent their daughter Irene to take a nap. Everyone gathered in the living room to discuss the current situation. Although you may not believe me, I don't know the current situation of the Demon King's army. Elena was the first to speak after preparing a cup of amber drink that looked like weak tea for everyone. I believe you. Su Xinxing took a sip of the tea and rolled on the ground with his tongue sticking out. If you really wanted to cause trouble, you wouldn't have surrendered to us so easily. Lin Qianqian seemed to want to say something. Judging from her usual behavior, Su Xinxing guessed that she probably wanted to express her opposition and say something inappropriate, just like the troublemaker in Mr. Jin's pen who always said, no, 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 and said something inappropriate. But since Elena had just treated them to a sumptuous meal, even Lin Qianqian, who was as insensible as Lin Qianqian, merely pursed her lips and didn't say anything in the end. To be honest, I'm also very confused. The great demonic realm was destroyed by you and your companions. It's unlikely that a new demon king would come to this world. The demons in this world also don't have any new demon kings, so I really don't know what's going on over there. Elena heaved a sigh of relief when she saw this, and then she slowly added. Is that so? Then we're in a state of confusion again. I Ching, who thought that things would take a turn for the better, couldn't help but sigh. Sorry to disappoint you. Elena bowed slightly to the new hero and apologized. No, you don't need to apologize. It's not your fault. I Ching replied hurriedly with a red face. Could it be that I Ching likes other people's wives? Xia Shuiyao, who was beside I Ching, seemed to have discovered the truth of the world and showed an extremely shocked expression. Idiot I Ching, I didn't expect you to be such a person. Lin Qianqian also immediately showed a look of disdain. I say, this is someone else's house. Can't you pay attention to your image? Su Xinxing was also helpless against these three guys who always started small drama all of a sudden. Did the Frost Eagle Empire's mages really not summon the wrong person? Fortunately, not everyone was pretending to be dumb. There were still characters who were seriously reading their lines and pushing the plot forward. If I'm not wrong, the formation of the demonic king's army might have something to do with the church. Finn, who seemed to be thinking about something from the beginning, ignored the new hero and his happy companions and said with a solemn expression. Wasn't the church destroyed long ago? Su Xinxing recalled his experience when he first came to this world and asked curiously, I remember that when we came to this world, only half of the church's holy mountain was left. That's right. At that time, because the church controlled the divine power, it was a threat to the demons. So the holy ground and several large settlements were the first to be destroyed by the demonic king's army. Finn nodded and began to explain to Su Xinxing and the others, but a centipede dies but never falls down. About 10 years ago, the church reappeared in this world. At that time, people were suffering from the torment of war and their hearts were empty. They were looking for spiritual sustenance. Plus, the divine power was quite effective in healing injuries, so the church quickly rose again. And about 5 years ago, the entire force returned to its peak. It seems that someone from the destroyed church escaped with the inheritance. Su Xinxing licked his front paws, but what does this have to do with the demonic king's army? Originally, after Alina's surrender, the demons under the demonic king's army either left human territory and went to undeveloped desolate lands, or became humans and mixed in with the humans to make a living with their skills. But after the church rose again, an organization called the Heresy Judgment Authority began to search and kill the demons mixed in with the humans. Finn sighed, those lunatics are extremists. Even if the demons have already laid down their weapons or have not harmed humans at all, once they are found, they will immediately be punished with all kinds of horrifying capital punishment. Compared to that, the basins and firecrackers you told us before are simply too weak. The blonde youth's face was grim, no longer the usual peace and gentleness when facing his daughter. A large number of demons died because of this. Although Alina and I have organized several demons to escape, and almost all of them were successful, compared to the demons in the current human society, it is just a drop in the ocean. Every day, seeing their companions being executed, and not just the demons, even their human wives and innocent children were not spared. They were all tragically killed. The remaining demons naturally could not sit still. The prestigious demons called for their companions to raise the flag of 15 years ago, hoping to sweep the world again is not incomprehensible. As soon as he finished, the entire living room fell into silence. After a long while, Su Xinxing said, I understand. I Ching boy, have a good rest today. Tomorrow morning, we will go to the church. Oh, okay. I Ching, who came back to his senses, hurriedly nodded. It seemed that he also wanted to confirm something. Then he reacted, are we not going today? It is a little late, and this place is at the edge of the empire. It should be quite a distance from the church's stronghold, so a good rest is the right choice. After all, you spent a lot of energy on the previous journey. Su Xinxing explained to him, and then looked at Finn. The latter nodded knowingly and added to Su Xinxing's words, the church's new holy mountain has been moved to Isamol, which is nearly 1,000 kilometers away in a straight line from here. Then what is your real purpose? Lin Qianqian, who was watching coldly, suddenly asked. I have eaten enough black bread. At least for the next 2 days, I want to eat a good meal. I Ching's gaze, which was originally filled with admiration, suddenly became awkward. Was it really okay to push back the great cause of salvation for a day for such a reason? Don't even think about it. I will not eat that kind of slime feast again. Lin Qianqian's face was pale, and she firmly refused. She seemed to recall the feeling of vomiting just now. Wait, I think Lin Qianqian is focusing on the wrong thing. The main point was not the slime feast, okay? However, just as Su Xinxing said, the new trio of heroes had fought with a considerable number of monsters on their way here, so everyone was very tired. It was best to have enough time to rest and recover. Even if they did not have any combat strength, Su Xinxing alone could wipe out the entire Demon King's army or the church's army. Chapter 204. The next day, when Su Xinxing yawned and walked out of the temporary cat bed made of wooden boxes, Alina was already preparing breakfast in the kitchen. Good morning, because he had to work and help Molly make breakfast on Earth, Su Xinxing woke up early every day. He didn't expect Alina to wake up even earlier. Good morning, sir. Alina responded kindly, and offered a small saucer of warm milk. He placed it on the table. Are the others still sleeping? Su Xinxing jumped onto the table and licked the milk. She felt that the taste was mellow and had a long aftertaste. Suddenly, she felt that it was better not to ask what animal the milk was from. That human boy has already woken up. He's currently pestering Finn to learn some sword skills from him. In fact, when Yi Qing was in the palace, she had wanted to learn the so-called swordsmanship from Su Xinxing, who claimed to be the brave familiar. However, she was rejected by the latter. How should I put it? Everyone has a period of debut. Even Su Xinxing was no exception. Although he was already in his third year of high school when he transmigrated to Auravia, after collecting the Holy Sword and gradually gaining strength that far exceeded that of ordinary people, he had indeed fallen into a subtle state of Chinibu syndrome. He began to deliberately learn some swordsmanship, and then gave it names such as Sword Self-Realm, Creation and Destruction, for Holy Swords, Great Void Catastrophe, Save the World by Killing, and so on. However, after trampling over Demon King City, crushing the 9,000 worlds, and fighting a bloody battle in the great demonic realm, Su Xinxing, who had recovered from his Chinibu syndrome, found that he only needed to wield his sword normally and seriously. Jokes aside, Su Xinxing actually approved of Yi Qing learning swordsmanship from Finn. Unlike a savior like himself who only knew how to slash blindly, Finn was born in the royal family of the Frost Eagle Empire. His knowledge was diverse and complicated. Other than the useless political battles, the royal family's exquisite swordsmanship and alchemy knowledge were still very valuable. Moreover, with Su Xinxing's blessing of the battle god, he didn't have to worry about not being able to learn any combat skills. Morning. Ah. Good morning. At this moment, Lin Qianqian slowly walked out of the room with her messy hair. She looked like she was still half asleep and couldn't help but yawn. Madame Elena, have you seen Xia Shuya? Perhaps it was because she was still sleepy, but Lin Qianqian didn't have her usual aggressive vibe. Instead, she looked soft and gentle like an ordinary girl. Lin Qianqian and Xia Shuayao slept together in Irene's room last night. Yi Qing and Finn slept in the guest room while Irene slept with her mother Elena in the couple's bedroom. By the way, the reason why Yi Qing took the initiative to sleep with Finn, aside from the fact that it was a little cramped for the family of three, was to prevent Xia Shuayao from attacking them at night. During the previous journey, this current hero had almost suffered a nervous breakdown because of this. As for that girl, she went out with Irene to buy ingredients for lunch. Elena replied softly. I see. About yesterday, I'm very sorry. Lin Qianqian hesitated for a moment before she finally spoke up. As for whether it was because of the duel with Finn or because of the unknown creature in the food that wasted the fruits of Elena's labor, no one knew. It's okay, I'm not angry because of it. Elena didn't seem to care at all and responded with a smile. This made Lin Qianqian put her mind at ease. But then she noticed that Su Xinxing, who was lying on the table, had a gratified expression on his face as if he had seen a naughty child finally become sensible. She couldn't help but blush and say in embarrassment, "What's so good about a stinky cat?" "It's nothing, I'm just looking at today's food," Su Xinxing said in an extremely fake tone. It seemed that the hero's team was indeed a good kid. Well, let's not talk about a certain girl for now, what? Lin Qianqian muttered in dissatisfaction, but then she rolled her eyes and revealed a sly smile. Ah, speaking of which, you haven't taken a bath these days, right? Wait, what are you trying to do? Su Xinxing immediately became alert. Of course I'm going to do justice for the heavens. Ah, no, I'm going to bathe you. The girl approached the black cat with a smile and rubbed her hands together. Thank you for your kindness, but I refuse. Hey, what's wrong with a beautiful girl like me bathing for you? Beautiful girl? You have questions about that part? Well, it's not that I'm bragging, but don't look at me like this, I'm very popular in school. Lin Xianxian puffed out her chest and replied proudly, the love letters I receive every semester can fill a woven bag. Oh, that's amazing. The black cat sat on the table and clapped its two front paws. It's just that I Ching doesn't seem to understand your feelings. That's right, that idiot is too slow. Ah, you stinky cat, what are you trying to get her to say? The girl who followed Su Xinxing's words immediately reacted and rushed toward the black cat with a red face. But of course, Su Xinxing deftly dodged her attack. Unwilling to give up, the girl continued to attack Su Xinxing, but Su Xinxing dodged all of her attacks with the agility of a cat. I'm very happy about your feelings, but I'm sorry. While the girl was panting because of the intense exercise in the morning, Su Xinxing had already run up to the chandelier and taunted her while wagging his tail. I like Lolita more than Sundara. If Xiao Xingyi heard this, he would probably say something like, the two don't conflict, right? But obviously, Lin Xianxian didn't have the luxury to do so. Damn it, why are you so agile? You're obviously good at sports. Nonsense, because I'm a cat. Su Xinxing replied without hesitation. At this time, the two people who were practicing or learning swordsmanship in the morning came back from the backyard, sweating profusely. Honey, is breakfast not ready yet? Finn threw the wooden sword aside and asked Alina affectionately. It's ready. Help me distribute the plates to the guests. Wait, is Irene not back yet? Alina was about to shovel the bacon from the pot into the plate when she suddenly felt that something was wrong. The girl went out quite early, so logically speaking, she shouldn't be back so late. At this time, the wooden door on the outer wall was knocked open with a bang. Xia Shueyao, covered in blood, stumbled in from the outside, and Irene's voice could not be heard beside her. I'm sorry. The girl staggered and fell to the ground as if she was exhausted. Irene was taken away. Chapter 205. Is it really okay to do this? A young man wearing a priest's robe asked a balding middle-aged man wearing a bishop's robe anxiously. Vincent's church was a special church that belonged to the newly established church. Its main responsibility was to manage the Gloom Forest. The reason why it was called St. Vincent's Church was because it was a wild church built by Father Vincent 10 years ago. Before he became a priest, the guy named Vincent was a burly professional hunter. However, the average age of the people in this world was not high, and this number would gradually decrease as one neared the city. After successfully becoming a clergyman, old Vincent died under the hooves of a four-toothed mammoth. Little Vincent had inherited his father's church and monopolized most of the local specialties of the Gloom Forest. This allowed the wild church, which wasn't favored by the church, to gradually prosper. Even the number of missionaries had increased by a lot. Little Vincent originally thought that his life would pass by peacefully, but he didn't expect that everything would change half a year ago. The appearance of the Demon King's army caused the church, which had been keeping a low profile due to the suppression of the royal family, to take action more frequently. They even began to send bishops to the wild churches that were developing well within the empire to preside over the overall situation. Little Vincent's church was no exception. Half a year ago, a bishop appeared out of nowhere and seized almost all of the church's power and wealth. If it wasn't for the fact that his strength was completely disproportionate to the other parties, little Vincent would have fought with his life on the line. About 3 days ago, the bishop, who had begun to settle down, suddenly announced to little Vincent, as if on a whim, that the mistress of the family on the outskirts of town was a dangerous demon who had infiltrated human society and had to be eliminated. Holy light above, it wasn't as if little Vincent didn't know the family this fellow was talking about. In fact, even though Finn tried his best to avoid contact with ordinary people, his family was still quite popular in town. Leaving aside Alina, who was the former Demon King, Finn was once the third prince of the Frost Eagle Empire. He had always treated the citizens of the Empire as if they were his own children. Therefore, whenever the townspeople were in trouble, he would lend them a helping hand within the limits of his ability. Then, here came the question. For a former hero, who could be considered the strongest human in this world, how big was his so-called range of ability? The answer was not clear, because Finn had never encountered a situation that left him helpless except when he helped his beloved wife give birth. It was not hard to imagine how much weight such a gentle, kind, handsome, honest, and loyal man had in the hearts of the townsfolk. When the mayor was re-elected, if Finn had not stood out and said that he did not want to be bound by the mayor's position, the townsfolk would have made him the new mayor with an overwhelming advantage. Even St. Vincent's Church had received a lot of help from him, so the church had a very good impression of him. If he had a reputation attribute, he would have long been worshipped by this quiet, handsome man. Now that they had to help an outsider deal with Finn, the people in the church were naturally reluctant. With all due respect, Your Excellency, I don't think Mr. Finn is an accomplice of the demons. If it's possible, could you allow me to communicate with him? Little Vincent cautiously suggested to the bishop. Don't interrupt. Or do you intend to disobey my orders? The bishop glanced at little Vincent, causing the latter to feel as if he had fallen into an icy cavern. No. I just think that if that madam is really a dangerous demon, we ordinary people are definitely not her match. So, it's better not to rashly alarm them. Little Vincent's body subconsciously shuddered at the thought of the bishop's methods, and then found a reasonable excuse to dodge it. If the bishop agreed to his suggestion, it would not be difficult to find a chance to inform Finn and his wife. If the bishop did not agree, then he had at least protested. That's true. The bishop paused, and then muttered to himself for a moment before finally nodding. Before little Vincent could rejoice in his heart, the other party's next sentence sent him back to the ice cave. In order to have the confidence to face the greater demons head-on, we need some trump cards. The bishop grinned, revealing a sinister smile that should not belong to a clergyman. Let's capture her child first. Wait a minute, that's two, little Vincent was just about to refute, but before he could open his mouth, a straight blade slashed across his neck. Eh? Blood flowed out of the corner of the young priest's mouth. He clutched his throat in vain, and as he made the sound of air leaking, he looked at the bishop in disbelief. At some point in time, a silver dagger with many runes and sacred patterns had appeared in the bishop's hand, shining with silver light. Didn't I say it before? Don't interrupt. The bishop shook off the blood on the dagger, and looked at little Vincent who had fallen to the ground with disgust. Only then did he turn his gaze to the other missionaries who did not know what to do. Now, can you listen to me properly? It was only now that the missionaries woke up from their daze, and hurriedly nodded like quails in their panic. After taking care of the injured Xia Shuayao, Alina took the lead and rushed to St. Vincent's Church. Yi Qing and Lin Qianqian, who were not trained enough, were left a few streets behind. Only the worried Finn and the expressionless cat-faced Su Xinxing were able to keep up with her speed. What's going on? Why would the church suddenly do something so hostile? Little Vincent shouldn't have done something like this, right? Finn was very confused about this. I think I know what's going on. Elena lowered her voice. Although there was almost no change in her tone, she did not sound like a good wife and loving mother. Instead, it made Su Xingxing feel that the Demon King who had always sat on the throne of the Demon King had returned. It was as if the Demon King who had always looked down on the world had returned. Compared to Aaron, perhaps Elena's abnormal state was one of the reasons why Finn was worried. Oh? Then what's going on? Su Xingxing asked as he leaped through the forest on all fours. I can feel that a demon with decent strength has sneaked into the church. The Demon King's face was gloomy. As for little Vincent, I can't feel his presence anymore. Chapter 206. He took the bait. The bell that signaled the start of the hunt began to ring. Yamadas was overjoyed. As one of the survivors of the battle with the Demon King's army 15 years ago, he thought he knew the horror of the Demon King's army better than anyone else. Therefore, even though he became the bishop of the new church because of his qualification as a hero who survived the battle with the Demon King's army, he still couldn't sleep and eat every day, fearing that the Demon King's army would suddenly come back one day. Until half a year ago, his fear came true. The demons who had disappeared emerged from all corners of the world, regrouped into the Demon King's army, and began to attack the human empires. Although many people who had experienced that era felt that the Demon King's army this time was not as strong as 15 years ago, many empires were swept into the garbage heap of history before they could even react. This time, the battle between the Demon King's army and the humans was not one-sided. Instead, they fought back and forth. 15 years ago, even with the help of the nameless hero, the humans won the final victory through the decapitation operation. But in the overall situation until the end of the war, the humans did not gain the slightest advantage. If the Demon King had not gone missing, rumor had it that he was killed by the nameless hero, but Yamadas did not believe this, and the entire Demon King's army fell apart. The humans would not have been able to defeat the demons and become the final victors. Therefore, Yamadas believed that the only reason the Demon King's army had not gained an overwhelming advantage was that the other party had not yet become serious. Therefore, when an advanced demon found him and asked him to become a spy of the demons in the new church, he agreed without hesitation and accepted the baptism of the cup of darkness, turning into a demon as well. As a bishop, it was difficult for Yamadas to continue to climb up in the church. However, the new church had just been re-established, and its foundation was not as strong as it was 15 years ago. Therefore, if he could gain enough merits, there was still the possibility of continuing to be promoted, such as discovering and eliminating a large number of demons hiding among the humans. He had once asked the superior demon who had instigated him. The superior demon said that 90% of the demons who did not join the Demon King's army had already given up the glory of being demons. Not only had their fighting spirit disappeared, but they were also indulging in the fantasy of loving humans. They no longer had the qualifications to continue living. As long as he could find them, it did not matter even if they were all wiped out. In this regard, Yamadas was very happy. First of all, it would be easier to eliminate the scattered demons than to face them head-on on the battlefield, whether it was the Demon King's army or the Salvation Army. Not only would he be able to gain a lot of merits during the war, but he would also be able to make it so that no one would suspect that this hero of humanity was actually a traitor. The last point was that after he demonized, the power awakened in his body was not the usual physical strengthening, nor was it a variety of magical abilities. Instead, it was a powerful perception and insight ability. It was because of this that he was able to find the demons hidden in the crowd. This time was also the same. After arriving here, he immediately sensed the aura of a demon in the nearby town. Moreover, it was the kind of demon that was very bad at concealing his aura. It was like a clumsy novice that could only vaguely conceal his aura. After some investigation, Immerse set his sights on the man named Finn's wife. She was quite a beauty. Even in the capital of the Frost Eagle Empire, such a beautiful woman was rare. Moreover, with her unique temperament, no matter how you looked at it, she did not seem like an ordinary person. He had caught a big fish. Immerse's experience told him so. As for the man named Finn, Immerse did not put him in his eyes at all. His ability allowed him to understand that Finn was a pure human, and as a demon worshipper, why would Immerse be afraid of a good human? When Alina took the lead to break into the church, she immediately sensed that something was wrong. An identification and binding magic circle? Silver metal was embedded in the limestone floor, forming a huge and beautiful magic circle on the ground of the church. At this moment, light like electric current was flashing on the silver metal like a track, indicating that the magic circle was in operation. Chains invisible to the naked eye appeared out of thin air and bound the woman at the entrance. Then, dozens of missionaries rushed in from the aisle behind the church's main hall, holding all kinds of weapons that were smeared with holy oil, facing the woman who looked extremely unhappy. The magic circle is black. Immerse walked out from the back, glancing at the color of the magic circle under Alina's feet. It was a kind of black that could not see any color, extremely pure black. There is no doubt that our Miss Alina is a demon. Some of the missionaries who had received help from Finn's family could not help but waver. Where is my daughter Eileen? Alina did not pay attention to Immerse's words, only coldly looking at the middle-aged man who was spouting nonsense and asked. You don't have the right to ask. Although I really want to say this, as the daughter of a demon like you, it's a pity that that little girl will also be sent to the headquarters of the church, the Holy Land of Lowell, for trial. Based on past experience, she will probably be skinned alive and turned into a specimen for people to see. Immerse did not feel the hostility in the woman's eyes, instead continuing to provoke her. But when he saw that Alina did not waver at all, he could not help but smack his lips in disappointment. Have you already given up resisting? Forget it, let me see what kind of demon you are. You can't even hide your own scent. As he spoke, he activated the magic circle's identification ability. In the next moment, a pitch-black flame rose from the ground, evaporating all the holy silver that was used to construct the magic circle. What replaced it was as thick as a substance, as black as the night, and unable to be blown away or dispelled. Indeed, it's my fault for not being able to hide my scent. In the darkness, Alina's voice seemed to come from the abyss, causing everyone present to feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. After all, as the former demon king, it took me a lot of effort to suppress my power to the level of an ordinary demon. Chapter 207. Immerse was on the verge of a mental breakdown. He did want to fish for the law enforcement. I mean to capture demons to increase his reputation, but the high-level demon that allowed him to reincarnate as a demon didn't tell him that there was such a big shot among the humans. This kind of magical surge was definitely far beyond the normal demons. No, even among the high-ranking demons, there were not many who could have this level of magical concentration, right? Not to mention the magical power that was as dark and despairing as the night. Could it be the rare royal family of the demon race in the legends? If that was the case, then there was a big problem. If one had to make an analogy, it was almost like a Japanese trader who wanted to perform well in front of the Locust army, so he set up traps everywhere to capture Hideki Tojo. Yamada's almost vomited blood. Even though he had always thought of himself as a resourceful person, he did not know how to deal with this situation. Even if he bent over and said, "It's a misunderstanding, my lady," there was a 99% chance that he would be slapped in the face. After kidnapping someone else's daughter and trying to kill their entire family, he still wanted them to apologize peacefully. What kind of mentality did he have? Thinking of this, Yamada's made up his mind. No matter what, he had to survive today first. Whether it's a conspiracy or a trick, I've given you so much time. You should have thought about it already, right? Elena said coldly as she watched the expression on the bishop's face change incessantly and finally become resolute, or rather, a hopeless case. Elena lost her patience and said coldly. The magic circle on the ground had evaporated the moment Elena unleashed her power seriously. The holy water in the church had also lost its holy power and was boiled into ordinary water due to the clash of magic power. Almost all of the anti-magic weapons were overloaded. The missionaries screamed in agony as they tossed away their scalding weapons. Their hands were sizzling from the heat, and a faint aroma of roasted meat wafted through the air. For Elena, as the Demon King, even if she was a little serious, the weapons of mortals would not have the slightest effect on her. Although she was not a god, because the level of Elena's hometown, the Great Demon Realm, was far higher than this lattice world, Elena's rank was also at the top of this world. To hurt her, at least a legendary weapon like the hero's sword or the Overlord's sword was needed. I admit that I made a mistake. Yamada's forehead was full of cold sweat. While slowly retreating, he tried to use his words to stabilize Elena, to prevent himself from being slapped to death by the impatient Elena. But don't forget, your daughter is still in my hands. I've tested her with the sacred silver. That child is just an ordinary human, and the blood of the demon race has not awakened. If you don't want her to be hurt, then let me go. Otherwise, once my henchmen get the news that I'm dead, they will definitely kill your daughter first. At the end of his speech, he shouted fiercely. His expression had changed from calm to hysteria. Originally, as a human, in the fight against the demon race, he would not hesitate to sit on the side of the demon race. His mental state was very different from that of ordinary people, and was very unstable. Now, in the face of desperation, the perverted in his heart was completely stimulated. Of course, you can choose not to spare me, but in this way, I have a child of the demon race to be buried with me. My life is worth it. However, Elena did not show the fear or anger that he expected. She still looked at him with that kind of emotionless, and even with a trace of inexplicable pity, which made him feel a chill down his spine. My patience is limited. Yamada's, who was dominated by uneasiness, roared crazily, and even the other missionaries felt that the bishop was not normal. Don't look at me with that kind of eyes. You seem to have misunderstood something from the beginning, Elena said at this time, and her tone was as cold as her expression. Until now, haven't you discovered the reason why I haven't done anything yet? Yamada's was stunned. Although he vaguely felt that something was wrong, but with Elena's clear reminder, he was completely awakened. The binding magic on the ground had disappeared, and Alina had also removed the suppression on her power. In theory, she could have killed everyone here in an instant. Even if she did not dare to do anything to him out of fear of harming the innocent, but it was strange that the missionaries did not suffer any injuries other than being burned by the overload of the magical weapons. Could it be that Alina's power was just an embroidered pillow, and did not have any real power? Impossible. If that was the case, Alina could have continued to use her power to intimidate him, and there was no need for her to say such things and expose herself. If that was not the case, then there was only one possibility left that Yamadas did not want to believe. Alina did not hurt anyone here, and only treated his threats with a cold face, and did nothing but act like she was stalling for time. If all of these were taken into consideration, could it be that the hostages? Yamada's face was pale. That's right. Although it only took a split second to get rid of those two who were probably your confidants, a voice that sounded gentle and kind, but there was a hint of anger hidden in it came from behind the bishop. But it took quite some time to find that secret passage. I'm sorry, Alina. Yamadas turned around in fear, only to see Finn carrying the unconscious Irene and slowly walking out from behind, blocking Yamada's last escape route. Sorry to trouble you, Your Excellency, Finn said softly. Immediately, a black shadow shot out from behind Finn and struck the missionaries on the back of their heads. Memory modification, meow. Seeing that the situation was hopeless, Yamada's legs finally gave way and he collapsed to the ground, losing his last will to fight back. Since you have done such a thing, you should be prepared for our revenge, right? Bishop? Alina smiled faintly. The next moment, a huge black pillar of light shot up into the sky, piercing through the dark clouds in the sky, and even the residents in the surrounding area felt uneasy because of it. When the pillar of light disappeared, St. Vincent's Church had completely disappeared from this world, and the missionaries whose memories had been modified were scattered around the large pit where the church used to be. Chapter 208. Thick, double-layered opaque curtains covered the windows, making the room that was facing the sun unusually dark. The house, which had been tidy and spotless because of the landlord's diligent cleaning, was now completely different from before. A large number of bags of puffed food were carelessly discarded on the floor. The seasoning salt and unfinished potato chips were spilled out due to the strange angles of the bags. There were also empty cola bottles and fast food boxes printed with bright red Kaifeng logos everywhere, as well as instant noodle buckets stacked high like the Tower of Babel. In addition, the comics and novels that were originally neatly placed on the bookshelf were scattered all over the floor, mixed with mobile phone charging cables, eye masks, earplugs, and other messy things. It made the room look like a junkyard, and there was no place for one to stand. If it wasn't for the fact that the landlord was angry and the owner of the room didn't use the spirit language to prevent creatures like cockroaches from appearing here, this place would have been called a purgatory on Earth. The antique computer screen that was moved into this room was showing the screen of a recently popular FPS game. The large square box and the words, "Internet connection disconnected," were particularly eye-catching. At this time, the owner of the room was lying on the computer table, looking like she had been burned to ashes. Even her light blonde hair seemed to have lost its original color. After an unknown amount of time, the rooster clock that was carelessly stuffed in the bookshelf suddenly let out a tragic scream. The girl who was awakened by the noise was still lying on the table. She grabbed a mug and threw it at the bookshelf. With a clang, the rooster clock, which was already missing an arm and a leg, was smashed into pieces. The white porcelain mug was not spared either. Together with the alarm clock, it was smashed into pieces. Thus, the room fell silent again. After a long while, the girl raised her head with difficulty and yawned cutely. Her long blonde hair curled up due to her poor sleeping posture. She looked sleepily at the corpse of the alarm clock and the mug on the ground. She pouted and muttered a few words. Then, she waved her slender fingers, and the pieces of the alarm clock and the mug that had worked so hard for her seemed to have gone back in time. The fragments reassembled and finally returned to their original state. She waved her hand and let the two objects fly into her hand. She carefully examined them and found that they were no different from their original appearance. She couldn't help but nod with satisfaction and put them on the computer table. She rubbed her still somewhat sleepy eyes, stood up from the chair, and staggered out of the room. Coincidentally, the other tenant of the apartment had just returned and was changing his shoes at the entrance. "Ah, Miss Emily, you're just in time." Qin Xinyan changed his sneakers into indoor slippers and held a long canvas bag in his hand. When he saw the girl who looked like she was about to fall asleep on the floor, he couldn't help but happily ask, "Senior Sue, is Senior at home?" "Huh?" Perhaps it was because she hadn't woken up yet, but Jasmine let out a soft and adorable sound with unknown meaning. "He's not home." Looking at Emily's lazy appearance, Qin Xinyan couldn't help but rub his eyebrows. If the landlord was here, he definitely wouldn't let Emily be so sloppy. But in this way, he had no choice but to borrow the Cheong Chi tooth from the White Deer Temple as collateral. The divine sword that could cut through souls would be temporarily useless. Divine weapons had spirits, and even if someone who was not fated to obtain it, it would be no different from scrap metal. And besides Su Xinxing, the girl couldn't think of anyone who could control this literal sword. But then Qin Xinyan frowned slightly. "Miss Emily, have you?" he asked uncertainly, grown a little. Emily's pajamas were actually Su Xinxing's old t-shirt. Because of the difference in their physiques, the t-shirt on Emily's body was unusually big and loose, looking like a bed sheet. But now, although the t-shirt was still loose, the girl's chest and pelvis were already faintly showing a youthful and seductive curve. If one had to describe it, compared to Jasmine's previous elementary school student body, her current appearance was almost at the level of a middle school student's body. When Emily heard this, she first tilted her head in confusion. Her light blonde hair flowed down her shoulders like a waterfall, emitting a faint and charming glow in the morning sun. Then, she looked at her hands and patted her chest with both hands. The sleepy bubble on the girl's head seemed to burst at once, and her expression instantly became clear and bright. "I've grown bigger. I don't think that's the main point, right?" Qin Xinyan almost staggered and fell to the floor. Although in a sense, she was still flat-chested. "The landlord is missing." Emily seemed to wake up a little and whispered something softly. Because of his cultivation, Qin Xinyan's hearing was better than that of ordinary people, but he could only hear a few words, "Not in this world. Very far away. No danger level in this world. Magic power is running low. The seal is in danger of losing its effect." Putting these words together, it was not difficult to come to the conclusion that Su Xinxing seemed to have gone to another world, causing some changes to the seal on Emily's body, which made the girl grow a lot overnight. But Qin Xinyan still felt that this was a bit ridiculous. Although many cultivation sects did not reject the theory of another world or even the immortal realm, breaking through the void was something that even the ancestors of the Bailu Temple failed to do. How could it appear so easily in front of him? I'm going to the other world to pick up the landlord, the girl said seriously. Well, let's assume that Senior Sue has really broken through the void. Miss Emily, how are you going to find him? Let's just say that I don't have a way to break through the void. Qin Xinyan's head was aching. He always felt that every time he stayed in Sakura's apartment, things would always change his worldview. Now, even the legendary breaking through the void had appeared. Also, Buddhists believe that there are 3,000 worlds in the world. Even we Taoists believe that after breaking through the void and ascending, there are at least 99 levels of heaven. It won't be easy to find Senior Sue among them, right? It's okay. As long as I'm here, it's okay. Emily was very confident about this. Chapter 209. Even though Emily said that, the most important question was still unanswered. How do we go to that world? So, Qin Xinyan had no choice but to ask again patiently. The girl gave her a thumbs up. Don't panic, hug me tight. Oh. I'm sorry. Qin Xinyan shyly hugged Emily's petite body. It was said that children had a higher body temperature. Even though Qin Xinyan wasn't sure if this was true, Emily was indeed very warm when she hugged him. The soft and meaty feeling was very comfortable and irresistible. This made Qin Xinyan understand why Su Xinxing always liked to use Emily as a pillow. Even though the little girl hadn't bathed for 2 days, she didn't smell of sweat at all. Instead, there was a wonderful light fragrance on her body. Even though she was just hugging him, Qin Xinyan felt the vital energy in his body become active. In terms of quantity, there was a faint tendency to increase. In the past, when spiritual energy was abundant and the cultivation sects contended with each other, this ability alone was enough to make the girl a treasure of the sect. Because it was too comfortable in all aspects, Qin Xinyan unconsciously increased the strength of his hands and held the girl tightly in his arms. Oh! Pfff! Emily struggled out of the girl's arms and let his head leave her chest. Only then did he take a deep breath with lingering fear, the feeling of suffocation. It's so uncomfortable. Sorry. Qin Xinyan came back to his senses and hurriedly apologized. Breasts are too dangerous. Emily looked at Qin Xinyan and said with a serious face, let's hold hands. Like this? The girl was a little embarrassed and carefully held Emily's small hand. I'm ready. Jasmine shook their linked hands like a child. 1, 2. Let's go. Although he really wanted to complain about Emily's incantation, at that moment, the surrounding scenery rapidly changed. It was no longer the entrance of Sakura Apartments that emitted a faint sandalwood fragrance. Instead, it was constantly changing. There was a land with rising green flames, a sea with crimson tides, a group of stone pillars that were scattered in picturesque disorder, and a colorful starry sky. In the end, everything was fixed on a grassland. Colorful flowers bloomed on the grassland, and there was a broken moon in the sky. Other than that, there was a magnificent mountain range in front of the grassland. However, the most eye-catching thing was not the mountain range itself, but the magnificent buildings that seemed to have clothed the entire mountain range in ancient Han Chinese style. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the buildings were divided into 9 floors. They were like terraced fields, covering the entire mountain range. At first glance, it looked like a monster lying on the ground. At this time, the row upon row of buildings that were built against the mountain range were brightly lit. It was clearly night, but the streets and squares in between were as bright as day. With his extraordinary vision, Qin Shinyan could even see the endless stream of people on the mountain streets. Where is this? Qin Shinyan felt that the spiritual energy in the air was much more concentrated than on earth. He was dumbfounded as he asked. Kunlun. Oli answered. What? Kunlun Mountain did exist on earth, and there were cultivation sects that had survived from ancient times. The Kunlun sect was near the unfreezing spring. Recently, it seemed that tourists who wandered to the gate had been harassing it as an ordinary Taoist temple. However, the mythical Kunlun had a different appearance. It was said that it was the capital city of the celestial emperor on earth. It had 9 layers of fortifications and was guarded by the god Lu Wu. In the west, there was the jade pearl tree, the jade tree, and the immortal tree. In the east, there was the Sha Tang, which would not drown after eating, and the Lang Huan. In the south, there was the crimson tree. In the north, there was the jade tree and the jade tree. The trees mentioned here were basically trees made of jade or precious stones. In addition, there was the jade tree, where the elixir of immortality was placed, and the crimson spring of immortality was placed. In the Han Chinese mythology, the Yellow Emperor ate a hot jade paste from Kunlun Mountain and became an immortal. Finally, through some indescribable act, he successfully ascended. Qin Shinyan also grew up listening to the myths of Kunlun. Even if most of the myths were false, one thing was undeniable: no matter what, Kunlun was definitely the closest place to the immortal realm. It was one of the gateways to heaven from earth. What's wrong? Emily pulled Qin Shinyan's hand, waking the girl from her out-of-body state. No, nothing. Qin Shinyan shook his head and tried to calm his mind. At the same time, he sighed that his temperament had not been honed to the point where he could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. Although Emily still looked a little curious, he did not ask anything. Instead, he held Qin Shinyan's hand and walked up the mountain. Along the way, Qin Shinyan saw a lot of strange things. Most of the people on the road were not like humans. Some of them only had 1 hand but 3 eyes. Some of them had boar-like teeth in their mouths. Some of them had a big hole in their chest. Some of them looked like large penguins. If these people were barely human, then there were some that were not human at all. Qin Shinyan saw a big pink rabbit with his own eyes. It was looking at its watch while carrying a basket of mysterious objects. It was running up the stairs while shouting, "It's too late." But Qin Shinyan was sure that the rabbit was not a monster. It was closer to the existence of the gods, with the head of a beast and the body of a human in the classic of mountains and seas. Once again, the girl was sure that she was no longer on Earth. Although the surrounding buildings looked quite ancient, in fact, this place was surprisingly modern. Many of the lighting devices that looked like lanterns were actually energy-saving LED lights. It was just that she did not know where the electricity came from. Some strange-looking shop owners were sitting in their shops idly fiddling with strange things like mobile phones or tablets. Yes, mobile phones and tablets. Qin Shinyan went up to them to confirm. The things sold in the shops were also strange. There were ancient swords and leather, as well as modern computers and televisions. Qin Shinyan even saw a group of rat-like creatures peddling unbranded power banks on the street. Where are we going? After walking in the mountain city for a long time, Qin Shinyan found that the number of pedestrians around her was decreasing, but the strength of the people around her seemed to be increasing. Now, she could no longer see through the strength of anyone around her. At the same time, there were more and more strange creatures. There were even creatures that looked like the faceless man in Spirited Away, that poked their heads out from all corners and looked at the two uninvited guests. This made Qin Xinyan, who was used to seeing storms and waves, feel a little scared and uneasy. "Let's take the bus." Emily was as concise as always, as if he did not notice the strange creatures spying on them. In the end, Qin Xinyan could only follow Emily to their destination in fear. It was a place that looked like a tram platform, but there were only a few creatures waiting for the tram. The pink rabbit from before was also here. "You're here again." A burly man walked over from not far away and looked at the two of them with an unfriendly gaze. Qin Xinyan immediately felt the alarm in her heart go off. An overwhelming sense of fear enveloped her whole body. Even though they did not fight, the girl already knew that the burly man in front of her was definitely not someone she could fight against. If they really fought, she would probably be turned into ashes in a single blow. "You are." Emily tilted his head. "Who are you?" The burly man's mouth twitched. Then, fine orange hair grew out of his face. The hair pattern on his forehead faintly formed a black king character. At the same time, 9 tiger tails stretched out from his back and swayed slowly. God Lu Wu, Qin Xinyan remembered that this was Kunlun. Seeing the other party's appearance, Qin Xinyan naturally understood the other party's identity. As the god who was appointed by the celestial emperor to guard Kunlun, the gate to heaven, Lu Wu's fighting strength did not need to be explained. Just the monsters under his command, Tu Lu and Xin Yuan, were already a terrifying force. If released, they could easily wipe out all the cultivators on Earth. In addition, Lu Wu himself was a powerful being who could fight against the ancient fierce god Gong Gong. It must be known that Gong Gong was a fierce person who could fight against the combined forces of several gods when Yi the Great was controlling the flood. He could be said to be the god of war among the gods, although he was driven away in the end. From the way he did not seem to welcome Emily, it seemed that things were going to be a bit troublesome. "I want to go to Yujing Huan, help me buy tickets." However, Emily was not afraid at all. Instead, he confidently extorted God Lu Wu. "I say, can't you stop for a bit?" Lu Wu looked like he had a toothache. "When you were drunk, you uprooted the multicolored jade tree. It wasn't easy for me to replant it. And this time, even the only human who can stop you is not here. How can I let you go to such an important place? Do you want to eat tiger meat?" Emily was no longer listening to Lu Wu. Instead, he asked Qin Xinyan. "Don't ask me about this kind of thing. God Lu Wu is already looking at me unkindly, and he's already grinding his teeth." The girl thought to herself, not knowing what to do. After confronting Emily for a while, Lu Wu seemed to give up and let out a long sigh. "Forget it. If I don't let you go, Kunlun will probably have to be rebuilt at least once." The tiger-headed man scratched his head with his sharp claws and turned back into a burly man. "But this time, please at least be a bit more obedient and don't cause any more big news." "Agreed." Emily waved his hand casually. Qin Xinyan swore that she saw the vein-like thing on God Lu Wu's forehead throbbing. However, for the sake of the harmony of the world, she did not say anything in the end. In the uncomfortable silence, the tram slowly glided to the side of the platform. "Okay, go, go." God Lu Wu waved his hand, as if out of sight, out of mind. Chapter 210. There were no tracks, but when the train traveled in the sky, it still made the clanking sound of an old-fashioned green train. However, the interior of the train looked exactly like a subway, and the seats were arranged on two benches. Since there were not many passengers, there was no need to worry about sardines being eaten in the subway in the big cities. Qin Xinyan sat obediently in the spacious carriage, but he would look out the window from time to time. Emily, on the other hand, was lying on the bench like a salted fish, using Qin Xinyan's legs as a pillow. He looked as if he was about to die because there was no Wi-Fi here. Speaking of which, what kind of place is Yujing Qianhuan? Because many of the strange creatures in the carriage did not communicate with words, even though they seemed to be chatting enthusiastically, in reality, no sound could be heard. The entire carriage was eerily quiet, so Qin Xinyan could not help but ask Emily, could it really be the Celestial Emperor's library? From what Qin Xinyan knew, other than the Qianhuan anthology written by the late Ming and early Manchu writers Zhang Dai and the Qianhuan Blessed Land, in Mr. Jin Yang's novel, the only other places that had the name Qianhuan were mentioned in The First Shocking Scene and the Women's Book Supplement. It referred to the Celestial Emperor's library. No, that old man doesn't like to read, so there's no library. Emily shook his head and replied. Ah, so there really is a celestial emperor in this world, Qin Xinyan thought to himself. Most of the worlds have a huge library, where all the knowledge recorded by the native intelligent creatures are copied and recorded. Emily sat up and casually explained, in the east, that place is called Yujing Qianhuan, and in the west, it's called the Sea of Craddock. When Mr. Landlord and I returned to Earth, we accidentally entered that place. Oh, I see. Qin Xinyan tried to put on a look of understanding. Because she had received a feudal education from a young age, most of the knowledge she learned came from the East. Other than her CET, for English, there was nothing else she could do. A woman with a big belly pushed a trolley past the walkway. Give me 2 cups of hot milk and chocolate. Emily waved at the woman. After a pause, she added hesitantly, please. The other party stopped in front of the two of them. Qin Xinyan, who was shrouded in its shadow, felt a little creeped out by its mountain-like body. He felt that if he became that fat, he would rather die. Then, under Qin Xinyan's horrified gaze, the woman tore open the fat around her neck and took out a tray, a teacup full of steaming sweet milk, and a large piece of chocolate from her pitch-black body. After passing the items Emily had ordered to Qin Xinyan and bowing to them, the woman continued to push the trolley and walked towards the next carriage with heavy steps. Who was that person? Qin Xinyan asked softly after a long while as she watched the figure disappear into the distance with lingering fear. A waiter, probably. Emily chewed on the chocolate and answered uncertainly. This world was crazy. Qin Xinyan was speechless as he took a sip of milk from his teacup. Then, his power began to soar. The train stopped at a platform that was like an island. When Qin Xinyan got off the train, he realized that he was surrounded by a vast and boundless ocean. But this ocean did not have any signs of life. If he looked closely, he would see that there were countless books submerged in the water. Since the birth of the world's first language, whether it was the past or the future, all of human knowledge and culture was recorded here until they completely disappeared from the earth. The last traces of extinct civilizations, the beliefs and thoughts of ancient humans, the thoughts and knowledge of all intelligent creatures about the world. Recording all of this is the meaning of the existence of the Craddock Sea, Emily said softly as if he was talking to himself. Why, do you know all of this, Emily? Qin Shinyan looked away from the spiral seaweed-like book tower under the sea and looked at Emily in surprise. It's nothing, I've seen something similar before. The little girl answered casually. Then, as if she wanted to divert Qin Shinyan's attention to something else, she forcefully explained, this region is the Earth region. All of the books that have appeared or will appear in human history can be found here. The more profound the book's thoughts and literature, the easier it is to sink into the deep water. Conversely, the more shallow the book is, the easier it is to float. Oh, is that so? Qin Shinyan looked at a novel that was floating on the platform. The title of the novel was, My Ghost Parade Is Not This Cute. Are you sure the deeper the book is, the better? That's right, those that float so shallow are all trash. Jasmine replied resolutely and decisively. Qin Shinyan felt as if she could hear someone wailing in anguish from the unseen world. So what exactly are we here for? Qin Shinyan asked curiously. The landlord will write an autobiography in the future. But because the landlord's writing style is terrible, there's nothing else in it except for his own experience. Emily answered, if we can find it, we'll know where the landlord is now. Was it an illusion? She felt that Su Xinxing was miserably slandered by Emily. Besides, he even wrote an autobiography. Su Xinxing was unexpectedly narcissistic. There's one more thing. Emily warned seriously, after you find the autobiography, you can't read the content after that. Something bad will happen if you pry into the landlord's future. Qin Shinyan, who saw Emily's serious expression for the first time, nodded involuntarily. But then she came back to her senses. Wait, Emily, aren't you going to look for it? I have more important things to do. Emily looked over Qin Shinyan's shoulder and looked behind her. Before you find the autobiography, you have to resist the bookkeepers here. Don't worry, the will of the great devil realm will guide you. Unlike God Lu Wu, the bookkeepers were not real creatures. They were closer to robots, and there was no room for negotiation. So when Qin Shinyan dived into the water to look for Su Xinxing's autobiography, Emily was already fighting with the three bookkeepers on the surface of the sea. Even if she didn't look up, Qin Shinyan could feel the terrifying power surging on the surface of the sea. Affected by the aftermath of the battle, many towers of books in the sea began to collapse. This undoubtedly increased the difficulty of Qin Shinyan's work. What a joke! How could it be so easy to find the only correct answer among millions of books? But not long after, Qin Shinyan felt as if she was being summoned by something. She swam in a certain direction and found a book that was different from the others. I've got it, this is it. Qin Shinyan hurriedly flipped through the book according to the date and found the current time. Lattice World? Is that a serial number? I don't care. The surrounding towers of books were collapsing more and more. Qin Shinyan could only hurriedly throw down the book and float up. It wasn't that she hadn't thought of bringing the books back, but when she tried to do so, she realized that although the books could be read, they couldn't be brought back. This was because they were all the manifestations of knowledge, and not real entities in the true sense. When she floated up, Qin Shinyan found that only half of the platform they came from was left. Although Emily was still standing there as if nothing had happened, his forehead was covered in sweat. The three Zenyatta-style bright silver book guards were even more miserable. They either had their arms pulled off or their legs were missing. The only one whose body was still intact was twitching from time to time with his head tilted to the side. He looked like a robot that had crashed. It seemed that Emily had the upper hand in the battle just now. Did you find it? Emily took the time to ask Qin Shinyan. Of course. Qin Shinyan replied with a thumbs up. Very good, let's retreat. Emily jumped down from the platform, but he didn't sink into the water. Instead, he stood firmly on the surface of the sea and ran to Qin Shinyan's side. Before the book guards could react, he grabbed Qin Shinyan's arm and pulled hard. Then, the scenery around them changed rapidly again. In the next moment, Qin Shinyan felt her body return to land from the buoyant sea. She was pulled back by gravity and fell hard on the floor. When she came back to her senses, she was no longer surrounded by the vast sea. Instead, she was once again in the familiar hallway of Sakura Apartments. We're back already? The girl was still a little confused. She asked dizzily, Emily, since you can directly travel through space, we didn't have to take that strange train in the first place, right? No, other than a few points, the only place I can teleport to is Sakura Apartments. Emily shook his head. Even the teleportation ability itself was obtained because there was no supply of magic from the landlord, causing the seal to loosen. Even so, we didn't have to run so fast just now, did we? I think you had a big advantage. Qin Shinyan complained as she rubbed her aching waist. The wisdom of mortals. Emily replied expressionlessly, in the Kratic Sea, the book guard's power is limitless. Even if they are reduced to ashes, they only need a few breaths to recover. Moreover, every time they are defeated and resurrected, they will become stronger as long as they don't exceed the limits of the world. However, my seal hasn't been completely unlocked, so this kind of battle of attrition won't last long. Is that so? Qin Shinyan was a little dizzy. Jasmine looked at Qin Shinyan with an expression that said, you can't teach a child. How should she put it? Qin Shinyan felt that as Jasmine grew older, although her facial expressions had become more expressive, they had also become more hurtful. Chapter 2:11. The gods in Huaxia are different from those in Japan. Their priesthoods are much more restrictive than those in Japan. At the same time, their influence on the world is stronger than that of the gods on the island. Even if it's a low-level earth god, once he dies, Jiangjin will suffer a series of natural disasters. All the vegetation on the land will wither, the ground will sink, and the buildings will collapse, not to mention those high and mighty gods. Although you're an Einherjar and don't have much to do with this, you still have to pay attention to your words and actions. Don't commit any taboo. In the Earth God's cave in Jiangjin, the mushroom-headed Earth God Loli said seriously to Chihaya Fukuyama, who had been learning from her for some time. I understand. Thank you for your teachings. The girl from Fusang was sitting on a cushion, bowing and thanking him seriously. I've taught you the basic knowledge of being a god in Huaxia. After that, you'll have to familiarize yourself with it. The Earth God Loli yawned and waved her hand. That's all for now. You can go back to your apartment. Yes. Chihaya Fukuyama nodded again and stood up from the cushion. At this moment, the ceiling above the cave seemed to have been smashed by something. With a deafening bang, a large amount of soil and stones fell from the ceiling. Ah! I just bought a PS4 Pro. The Earth God lowly lamented at the corner of the collapsed ceiling. Fortunately, the quality of the Sony was passable. Although most of it was covered by soil and stones, at least from the outside, the game console was not broken. Before Earth Goddess Loli could breathe a sigh of relief, two figures fell through the hole in the ceiling and stepped on the main computer that was plagued with disasters. With a crack, it was sent to meet Kotaro Kenji. The earth god Loli, who had been repeatedly defeated, simply rolled her eyes and passed out. T-sensei. Chihaya Fukuyama was a little confused by this unforeseen event. For a moment, he did not know what to do. In this regard, Qin Xinyan could only laugh bitterly. Don't worry. She's fine. Emoli patted the dust off his body and calmly comforted him. I think you should have something else to say now. Sure enough, the earth god Loli got up and complained. Like apologizing, and apologizing. Since the two of them met, they had always worked together to scam money on the internet, so they were very familiar with each other. Right now, I have something important to do. Emoli did not hesitate. What's wrong? What's wrong with you guys? Earth god Loli scratched her head. Spare me, last time when the yellow springs leaked, it made my stomach hurt for a while. I'm going to find the landlord. What? That guy ran away from home? It is indeed rare. Earth god Loli was surprised for a moment, but then she frowned and looked Jasmine up and down. Speaking of which, why do I feel like you've grown a little taller? My nest is in the growth stage. And I'm already in my final form. The earth god Loli complained, but then she sighed and pushed Chihaya Fukuyama to Emoli. Although I don't know the details, you guys should be looking for her, right? Since the class is over, you guys can go wherever you want. Thanks, Mushroom, I'll treat you to some Chinese crepes when I come back. With the landlord's money. On the way, Qin Xinyan briefly explained the situation to Chihaya Fukuyama. The latter tilted his head and thought for a while before shaking his head helplessly. Chinese is too complicated, I don't understand a lot of things. Well, it seems that even a god would have a hard time overcoming the language barrier. In short, according to what Miss Jasmine said, we need to head to another world to bring Senior Sue back, and when we pass through the world barrier, it would be much more convenient if we had someone like Miss Shan Shan with a divine spark. That's pretty much what I meant. Therefore, Qin Xinyan tried her best to explain with concise words and gesticulations. This allowed Chihaya Fukuyama to barely understand what he meant. Because of the series of events, it was now close to midnight. There was only a lonely moon hanging in the sky, making it feel even more lonely. Qin Xinyan suddenly realized that Emoli, who was walking in front of him, seemed to be heading in the wrong direction. They didn't seem to be heading towards Sakura Apartments, but rather to the city. Miss Emoli, what are you planning to do? Qin Xinyan quickly asked when he remembered that Emoli would occasionally do things that he couldn't understand. We need a vehicle to go to another world. Emoli replied in a concise manner. We're going to find that vehicle. Vehicle? Qin Xinyan blinked her eyes, unable to understand what the girl meant. After a while, the three of them arrived at their suspected destination. The Jiangji Museum? This, Miss Emoli, what are you planning to do? Qin Xinyan became more and more confused about Emoli's behavior. The Jiangji Museum was quite miserable. Since its establishment, it seemed to have been encountering strange things. Some time ago, there were even strange thieves. Emoli ignored Qin Xinyan's question and carefully ran to the wall. Just when Qin Xinyan thought that the girl was going to use some kind of magic to open the door or window, he saw her punch a hole in the wall and then walk through it with ease. This made the corner of Qin Xinyan's mouth twitch, but he couldn't help but follow her. Chihaya Fukuyama hesitated for a moment and also entered the museum. Then, Emoli brought them to the most important exhibit in the museum. This is Qin Xinyan looked at the huge object in front of him and couldn't help but gulp. It had just been retired, and it could be said to be the last old-style steam locomotive in the whole of China. It was the treasure of the Jiangjin Museum, River Moon. Of course, because there was no carriage behind it, the River Moon displayed in the museum was actually just a locomotive. Could it be that the vehicle Emily was talking about was this? Let's go. Emily used her actions to prove Qin Xinyan's guess. She took the lead to cross the barrier outside and directly boarded the River Moon. Wait a minute, how do we drive this kind of car? Qin Xinyan wanted to cry but had no tears. Chihaya Fukuyama, on the other hand, was more curious. Welcome to the River Moon sightseeing train. When Qin Xinyan helplessly boarded the train, he didn't know when, but there was a small girl wearing a black cap and a conductor's uniform in the cabin. Please sit tight and fasten your seatbelt, this train is about to depart. White smoke billowed out of the chimney of the locomotive that should have been abandoned, and a sharp whistle sounded from the steam whistle once again. But for some reason, no staff came to check on the situation even though it had turned out this way. Then, the old wheels slowly turned and the River Moon moved forward again. It carried a few girls with different thoughts and gradually accelerated. With the unique whistle of this type of steam train, it drove into another world. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.